subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Synopsis. Luo Xingchen travels to the world of fairy tale. Comes with a plug-in magic sublimator. Since then, Luo Xingchen has embarked on a different path. Not to mention, you can strengthen yourself by borrowing the magic crystal badge transformed from the magic power of the sorcerer. Mainly, you can use multiple badges to merge into a new form. Please, I'm not the debtor. But when he really tried it, he realized that this thing was really fragrant. Of course, there are occasional troubles. What if the other party doesn't borrow it? Easy to do. As a wizard genius, it's not too much to awaken magic, right? Devouring magic that can forcibly extract the magic power of the magician with the awakening. Combining the two, you have to borrow this power, and you have to borrow it. On a certain day, Luo Xingchen holds the dark magic crystal badge of the black dragon in his hand and adds the bright magic crystal badge of the meteor. The moment they come together, the ultimate form that surpasses the gods is born. Chapter 1: The Meeting of Fate. A Boy and a Girl, X776. Ishgar Continent. Kingdom of Fiori. It is a permanently neutral country with a population of 17 million. It is also a world full of magic. Gorgeous and powerful magic has become a part of people's lives in the passage of time. Santa Cadia Town. As a town in a remote part of the Magic Kingdom, it doesn't have a lot of magical shadows like other towns. After all, the economy here is relatively backward, and there are no magicians willing to come here. Due to the remoteness of the terrain, it was far from the jurisdiction of the royal capital. Therefore, the residents here are also persecuted by many bandits. By the way, Uncle Gildarts, what should we do next? The long crimson hair was tied into a braid and draped behind him. He was wearing silver-white armor that was different from ordinary people, and his lower body was a white pleated skirt that reached his knees. The girl with a western sword hanging from her waist turned her head. On the delicate face, the smart big eyes looked at the sloppy uncle beside him and blinked. Well, the first thing is to collect information. The sloppy uncle named Gildarts smiled slightly. Obviously, everything is in his grasp. One more thing, Urza. Gildart's face became unusually serious at this. He looked straight at the little brat in front of him. Gildart said, "First of all, I'm still young, so don't call me uncle. Secondly, don't call me uncle. Do you understand?" Putting those words down, Gildarts walked past Urza and headed forward. Really, the girl named Urza tilted her head slightly. There was a little confusion in his eyes, but everyone in the guild is called this. Is there something wrong? Looking ahead, he was wearing a tattered cloak with orange hair that seemed to be greasy after a long time. It was obviously tall, but slightly squat and slightly wretched figure. According to Urza's understanding, they should all be classified as uncles. Shaking his head, "Really, anyway, the task should be more important now. How can I be distracted during the task?" Shaking his head reproachfully, Urza stepped up to catch up with Gildarts. Outside the noisy, dilapidated pub, two figures, one big and one small, came here. Urza's eyes stared directly at the half of the tavern plaque. Buzzing flies echoed in her ears, and the stench of untreated garbage seemed to linger around her. All this made Urza frown slightly. Although his own guild is also so noisy, it is not so unbearable. There are only 3 words for Urza's first impression here. Dirty, messy, bad. Gildarts is big. Urza habitually wanted to call uncle. But after seeing Gildart's extremely serious face, he held back. Seeing this, Gildarts nodded in satisfaction. "Just call me by my name, or big brother or something." A smile appeared on his bearded face. Urza shivered slightly. "Anyway, is this what you're talking about, inquiring about information?" she asked softly. Gildarts nodded. After all, the bugs lurking in the dark like to be in this kind of mixed place. As he spoke, he took out a task order form from his arms. The specific content of this task is marked at the top. Defeat the Dark Guild that is entrenched near the town of Santa Casia. Deathwing. Although it is a dark guild, according to the client's estimate, its strength is not strong. So it was just right for Urza's first mission. Of course, it was just right because of him and Gildarts. If it was someone else, it would be seriously out of line. After a little narcissism, Gildarts walked Urza into the pub. As soon as you step into this place, into the ear is the countless noisy sounds. Those blushing big men, one by one, raised the wine glasses in their hands. The laughter was mixed with anger and curses. Perhaps it was a little uncomfortable for Urza, who was young and a girl. But for old fritters like Gildarts, it's no surprise. With Urza, he didn't have the slightest bit of life and walked straight towards the empty seat inside. After being seated, Gildarts reached for a beer. Given that Urza is underage, Gildarts has no plans for Urza to drink. Urza didn't care about that either. After the beer was brought up, the uncle's eyes were brought up unconsciously, and the scantily clad young waiter attracted him. I don't know if it was an illusion, Urza suddenly felt. This uncle, known as the strongest wizard in the guild, at this moment, the wretched atmosphere became more intense. Shaking his head, considering that he and others were here to collect information, Urza quickly entered the working state. After all, it's my first mission. So Urza felt that he had to do it perfectly. With his hands on the table, Urza stretched his neck hard, trying to listen to the chatter of the people around him as much as possible. See if there is any information on the Dark Guild of Deathwing. But, unfortunately, it took 10 minutes to come down. Urza didn't gain anything. Boom! Suddenly, a not-so-loud palm clap sounded to the bar. Huh? Did you make a mistake? Is this pub too bad? Not even a milk? It was a slightly green male voice. There was a little strangeness in the voice. Urza looked in the direction of the bar, following the source of the sound. At a glance, he found the owner of the voice. No way, it's too conspicuous. After all, in such a bar full of big men, there is actually a second child besides himself. No, it should be a teenager. After all, the youth looked like 12 or 13 years old. The boy has short, clean, crisp black hair. There was a sharp and stern look on his smooth and white face. Since the distance is not too far, the juvenile's upright facial features can be clearly seen, and the eyes that seem to reflect the stars and the sea immediately caught Urza's attention. And this also confirms that appearance is always the first impression of judging a person. Even though Urza doesn't know anything at the moment. I'm sorry, we are a bar here, and bars don't sell milk. At the bar, the bartender's hands helplessly spread out. If it's normal, when you meet such a little kid who shouts to drink milk in his own bar, the boss must think someone's spoiled brat. Not to mention driving out of the gate, but he wouldn't take care of such a child. But after seeing the large bills slapped on the table, the boss's original unhappiness all vanished, even still thinking about how to restore such a big customer. After all, no one can live with money, right? How about, can you see other juices? The boss asked tentatively. As he spoke, he pointed to some fruits that were originally used for bartending. As long as you think it's okay, I'll squeeze it for you right away. Or if it really doesn't work, I'll go out and buy it for you right away. What do you think? The boss looked at the young man in front of him with a shy smile. His eyes were full of flattery. After all, this young man made a lot of money. As long as you hold steady, that bill might be worth the price of selling 10 or even 20 glasses of wine. Although very helpless, but due to thirst for a long time, Luo Xingchen finally compromised. Forget it, just juice. Please hurry up. Okay, wait a moment. The boss immediately put away the notes Luo Xingchen slapped on the table. Then he turned around with a smile on his face and went to squeeze the juice. Seemingly aware that someone was watching him, Luo Xingchen couldn't help but look back. Next second, the eyes of the boy and girl met, and the gears of fate are turning quietly at this moment. At this moment, fates that were originally unrelated are intertwined. Chapter 2 Magic Sublimer. After looking at each other for a while, Luo Xingchen took the lead to withdraw his eyes, although it just felt a little different. But Luo Xingchen didn't take it too seriously. After all, Luo Xingchen has become accustomed to these things since he came to this world. That's right, Luo Xingchen is not from this world, but a traveler from the Celestial Dynasty. I was so excited that I was admitted to the university of my dreams, and my eyes were black. When he woke up again, he came to this magical world as a child. As a young man in a new era, Luo Xingchen naturally knew what was going on. Although there are some memories of the past life, it is not to the point of being unacceptable. After all, he had nothing to worry about as an orphan in his previous life. In any case, he is alone in that world. However, as a traveler, Luo Xingchen also naturally obtained the Goldfinger, a plugin called Magic Sublimer. This plugin is very simple, with only two functions. They are collection and manufacturing and fusion sublimation. The first is to collect and manufacture. The Magic Sublimer can collect the magic molecules floating in the air to create different magic crystal badges. Magic crystal badges can be roughly divided into three types according to their strength. It is distinguished by the color of the pattern on the edge of the badge, which are: the lowest level green badge does not have any special ability and can only provide people with pure magic power for cultivation. But according to Luo Xingchen's experimental results, much faster than normal meditation to absorb magic. Next is the red badge. This level of badge has the ability to attach regular magic to the magic crystal badge. When fighting, use the corresponding badge to integrate into your body. The corresponding magic can be used. How should I put it? It smells like a new generation of Ultraman. At present, Luo Xingchen's strongest cognition is the golden magic crystal badge. Follow the sublimator instructions. The magic attached to this level of badge is all very special magic, such as lost ancient magic, super magic, and so on. Each offers extremely powerful abilities. But due to normal circumstances, the magic molecules in the air are only the magic molecules in their original form. That is, absorbing this magic power can only condense the lowest green magic crystal badge. If you want to get high-level badges, you can only collect the magic power of mages who have mastered powerful magic. Due to the transformation of a sorcerer, this magic has a higher chance of condensing high-level magic crystal badges. As for how to collect these magic powers, Luo Xingchen has also done research, whether it is the magician who actively releases magic power or the magic left over from the wizard's battle. It is possible to condense the magic crystal badge. But according to the results of Luo Xingchen's practice statistics, the magic left over from the battle, the chance of condensing the magic crystal badge is much higher than that of the magician actively releasing magic power. In this regard, even the description of the sublimator does not explain why. After learning about this, Luo Xingchen's first thought came to his mind. That's it. It's more like the protagonist in the previous special film. Borrow strength everywhere, no. It should be said that it collects power to strengthen itself. After all, there is no need to pay it back. How can this be called a loan? However, although the advantage of this plugin is that it allows Luo Xingchen to use a variety of powerful magics, but the shortcomings are also obvious. That is the acquisition of magic power, which is somewhat difficult. Not to mention if you go to someone else to borrow strength, and they can agree. Even collecting the magic power left over from the Battle of the Mages was extremely difficult. After all, the magic power of the sorcerer left in the air will soon be assimilated by the world. Unless Luo Xingchen immediately ran over to guard when he saw someone fighting. However, this approach is likely not to be regarded as a conspiracy. And then a fat beating. What's more, there is no such thing as a novice gift bag in this broken system. So in the beginning, the magic sublimator was useless to Luo Xingchen. However, all these problems came after Luo Xingchen awakened his own magic. It disappeared completely. In this magical world, everyone has something called the source of magic in their bodies. When a magic source is activated, magic can be mastered, also commonly known as awakening. According to Luo Xingchen's understanding, magic is a strange thing. Some people can awaken magic by relying on themselves, and some people can master magic through acquired learning. But no matter which way the magic is obtained, how to use it is the most important. And since Luo Xingchen got a plug-in like the magic sublimator, he must turn on the magic source. And this time, the magic that originally belonged to Luo Xingchen also awakened. Devouring magic is the original magic of Luo Xingchen's awakening. As the name suggests, it is just like the star-absorbing Dafa in the costume films of the previous life. It can forcibly absorb the magic power from the mage's body and use it to strengthen its own magic power. But there is a limit the magic power absorbed is not permanent. It only temporarily increased Luo Xingchen's magic power, and after the devouring magic power was exhausted, it would not recover. Moreover, this move can easily damage the magic source of the magician. After all, it is still violent to snatch magic power. If the control is not good, it will directly drain the magic power in the target body. For wizards, if mana is forcibly emptied, he will suffer from mana deficiency. This is a deadly condition. Therefore, devouring magic needs to be used carefully. Overall, a bit tasteless, but with the magic sublimator, the shortcomings of both sides are compensated. Relying on devouring magic to forcibly absorb the magic power of the enemy mage, and relying on the magic sublimator to transform it into his own permanent power. Combining the two, Luo Xingchen can proudly say, "I have never relied on such absurd things as borrowing strength, but robbed them with my own ability." Cough, cough. It should be obtained by virtue of his own strength and fairness. Then came the second function of the magic sublimator. Fusion, sublimation. This function is somewhat powerful. It can fuse the power of two or more magic crystal badges of the same color with itself. This sublimates into a more powerful new combat form. It's not that 1 + 1 = 2. It is far beyond, and may even give birth to all kinds of incredible power. However, because of its strange rules that can only be merged with the same level badge, Luo Xingchen has only experienced the form after the fusion of the red badge once. No way, badges are really hard to get. Obviously, according to the description of the sublimator, the explosion rate of high-level magic crystal badges is about 20%. But after really experiencing it, I realized, where's this 20%? To say that 2% is to lift it up. In the years since Luo Xingchen came to this world, he has only obtained 4 high-level magic crystal badges, 3 red and 1 gold. They're a red badge of flame, a red badge of wind, and a red more special magic badge. The last is the most powerful golden badge so far. Its name is Extreme Ice Dragon Slayer Badge. It can bring Luo Xingchen extremely cold dragon slaying magic. According to Luo Xingchen's knowledge, there are people in this world who can use dragon slaying magic. Extremely rare, and as a magic that can slay dragons. Its own attack power is far beyond the ancient magic of ordinary magic. These badges are all the power Luo Xingchen acquired when he stepped into the mainland, with the pure magic power contained in the green magic crystal badge produced in 3 days. Luo Xingchen's magic power builds up surprisingly fast. After mastering the devouring magic, Luo Xingchen embarked on the road of traveling the world, robbing, gathering power 2 years ago. After 2 years of travel, Luo Xingchen has basically traveled all over the mainland and have a general understanding of the world. The continent where he is located is a place called the Eastern Continent. The popularity of magic is not high. That's why he only got 4 badges in 2 years. It is said that on the opposite side of the vast sea, there's a place where magic is highly developed. Its name is Ishgar Continent. It was at that moment that Luo Xingchen seemed to understand where he had come. The world of magic, the continent of Ishgar, plus Dragon Slayer magic. All this seems to point to an anime Luo Xingchen watched in his previous life. However, the real situation still needs to be verified. So Luo Xingchen set foot on a ship to the mainland of Ishgar. After 3 months of sailing, Luo Xingchen finally reached this continent and came to this tavern. Thoughts return. Luo Xingchen didn't care about Urza's sight anymore. In the 2 years of wandering, the attention from others is too much. After all, an underage child roaming the world alone. Plus that handsome face. Luo Xingchen almost always becomes the focus of the crowd wherever he goes. So, as I said before, he's pretty much immune to this kind of thing. Turning around, he quietly waited for his juice. He didn't notice a trace of loss in the young Urza's eyes behind him. Chapter 3, If the degree is too high, why not drink alcohol? What? Are you saying that you like that kid? Urza was taken aback by the sudden sound. Haha, just kidding. Looking at Urza's appearance, the unscrupulous uncle laughed without hesitation. However, to be honest, That kid is indeed handsome, and it's just a little bit worse than when I was a kid. Gildarts looked at Luo Xingchen's back and murmured, "So, it is?" Urza nodded knowingly. Glancing at Gildarts, he recalled the face of the teenager just now. After comparing the two, it seems that what happened to the uncle has caused the long-term disability? Urza asked seriously. Gildarts opened his mouth, but didn't know how to respond. I suddenly feel that I hate children a little bit. It took a long time for Gildarts to spit out such words. Boom! The originally dilapidated door was kicked open by Julie. The sudden loud noise completely alarmed the crowd in the entire tavern. The originally noisy atmosphere fell into a short-lived congealing in an instant. Bandit Chief Perlin Jeffrey with a mace, he walked in with 8 character steps. A group of younger brothers followed behind. At first glance, there are about 30 people in number. A piece of Wu Yangyang poured into this small and extremely dilapidated tavern. Therefore, the whole pub also seemed crowded. Where's the boss? Hurry up and serve us drinks. Celebrate the big money we made today. Pulin roared. Saying that, Pulin took the younger brothers behind him to find a seat nearby and sit down. When there is free space, sit in the free space. If not, the people who were originally sitting in the seats were rudely and directly driven away. No one dared to say anything more about it, or get used to it. Most of them are residents living in this town. The chaos of law and order has created a numbness of people. In order to relieve the enormous pressure of life, had to pass the boring time in the bar, relying on a lot of low-quality alcohol to numb his false soul. Therefore, it is not surprising for these bandits who often haunt the town. Not only did not resist, there are even many people who are flattering these bandits, want to join their team. After all, there have been many lessons learned as long as the boss of the bandit takes a fancy to the income of the younger brother. Then it can be said that he is standing on the heads of many honest people in the town. Seeing this, the bandits laughed even louder. That's why they became bandits. Isn't being a bandit just to make ordinary people fear them and compliment them? They like to see these people humbly. I like seeing these people face them, and they don't even dare to pick up their weapons. They like this sense of superiority. Gildarts, who was sitting in the corner, narrowed his eyes slightly and murmured, "The target is here." Urza on the side waited for Gildarts' explanation in confusion. Since it is a guild hidden in the darkness, only those who are close to the darkness can know it. A confident smile appeared on the corner of Gildart's mouth. I'm sure that these guys must have something to do with the dark guild hidden in this city. Listen to their conversation. Compared to forced confessions, what comes out inadvertently between conversations is the truest information. After explaining, Gildarts stopped talking. Instead, he focused on the noisy bandits. Listen to the teaching experience from the seniors. Urza nodded seriously, also focus on them. What's the matter? Boss, is this wine mixed with water? Why is it plain? Pran Jeffrey took the glass from the waiter. After tasting a mouthful, immediately vomited again. Annoyed, he shouted at the bar. I'm sorry, bosses, although this shop is dilapidated, it won't sell fake wine for money. Ordinary beer is just like that. The boss, who was making juice for Luo Xingchen, bowed slightly and looked apologetic. Boss, you don't come to this hotel often. I don't know very well. This is the beer sold in this pub. There is also a younger brother explaining. However, this tavern is most famous for the owner's bartending skills. I think it will surely satisfy you. Is that so? Pran Jeffrey raised an eyebrow. He looked in the direction of the tavern owner. In that case, boss, make me a cup now, the strongest one. Pran Jeffrey smiled and said, if it doesn't meet my requirements, then we won't pay today. Seeing the boss still standing there, he frowned. Immediately, I felt the sharp eyes of these bandits. The owner of the tavern glanced at Luo Xingchen at the bar, a little embarrassed. Although he is greedy for money, he still has his own principles. Logically speaking, Luo Xingchen came first and paid. You should do Luo Xingchen first. But he is the owner of a broken tavern. Where can you fight these outlaws? He wanted to make the bandits wait a moment, but in reality, he couldn't help but say no. Clenched fists, there was a hint of apology in Luo Xingchen's eyes. Just as he was about to speak, Luo Xingchen turned around and faced the bandits. I said, if you think the degree is low, why don't you just drink alcohol? A calm and slightly immature voice echoed in the small tavern. The bandits who were still noisy just now fell silent. Chapter 4 Juice with ice cubes will taste better. What did they hear? As a bandit boss whose sphere of influence has radiated several nearby towns. To be mocked by a stinky kid? Yes, in the eyes of these big men. Luo Xingchen, the guy who can only reach their shoulders, is a stinky kid. What is it to say that he is brave? Or should I say he is ignorant? Besides, didn't you see that the boss was busy? Can't you wait for a while if you really want to drink? Luo Xingchen brushed aside Pran Jeffrey, who was standing at the front. Or, no one taught you the principle of first come. First come? Problem occurs. This was the first thought that crossed the boss's mind, as he has opened a tavern in such a chaotic place for many years. Very clearly, in this boundary, who could be provoked and who can't be provoked? And Pran Jeffrey, the bandit boss famous for his brutality in this neighborhood. Naturally, it is in the ranks that cannot be messed with. The boss raised his head slightly, his eyes turned to Pran Jeffrey. Sure enough, Pran Jeffrey, who had been refuted and a little displeased. At this moment, his face became even darker. The doglegs who followed him immediately fried the pot. They picked up their weapons and stood up. Pair of bulging eyes glared at the boy at the bar. What are you talking about, BD? Do you know who you're talking to? I think you don't want to live. Stinky brat. This is not a place for a brat like you to come. Countless shouts of anger, the sound of sticks hitting the table reverberated in the small tavern. This moment, some people who did not belong to the bandit gang hurriedly carried their own wine glasses. Hide away from the pub. In this world, some liveliness are better not to watch. After all, there are no rules to control this group of desperados. They don't know, will staying on my own become a frustration tool for these guys? But they knew that it was in the hands of these brutal bandits. I'm afraid that ignorant little devil can't get out of this tavern. But not everyone is like that. At least 2 people were still sitting in the seats. Do these guys usually bully others like this? Urza clenched her fists. He stood up abruptly, even though it was none of his business. But she still wanted to get ahead. Not for anything else, just simply dislike it. Wait a minute, Urza, since that guy dares to touch these people's brows, I'm afraid he has something. Gildart stops Urza. His eyes turned to Luo Xingchen's direction. Let's see what this guy is going to do first. If we lose, we're going to help. Listen to Gildarts. Urza gave the bandits an indignant look and sat down. At this moment, watching countless people copying weapons surrounded them aggressively. The tavern owner gently tugged Luo Xingchen's cuff. Don't say it. These guys are not something that people like us can afford. Luo Xingchen shrugged. He turned around reluctantly. The index finger tapped on the bar table regularly and continued to wait for his juice. The tavern owner ignored Luo Xingchen's attitude. Instead, he smirked and said to the crowd, "Don't be angry. He's just a child. In this way, I will tune it for you first, and it'll be fine soon." However, the bandits at this moment did not intend to give up. Naturally, he would not listen to the words of tavern owner. In particular, as the leader of the bandit, it is impossible for Pran Jeffrey to lose face among his group of men, although the other party is only a minor child. He took a step, came behind Luo Xingchen. As an adult, he is much taller than Luo Xingchen. In addition, he is standing at the moment Luo Xingchen is sitting. Therefore, with his height advantage, he looked down at Luo Xingchen's back. "Little brat, what did you mean just now?" Pran Jeffrey's voice was low, like a beast about to rage. But Luo Xingchen didn't seem to notice the anger in his tone. With his back to Pran Jeffrey, his voice was still as calm. "It doesn't mean anything, it just means you have no education." This indifferent attitude, it made Pran Jeffrey completely angry. Parenting? When did a little kid dare to come and tell me about parenting? Stinky brat. Pran Jeffrey pulled out the huge mace he was carrying. He was about to smash Luo Xingchen's head. This is not the first time this kind of thing has been done. Countless people have been begging for mercy, trembling under this mace. There are also many people who will turn into a pile of rotten meat under this mace. It was with this ruthlessness that Pran Jeffrey was able to sit on the position of the bandit boss. With the mace in his hand, he won a high status. It has won the fear and compliment of countless people. For this reason, even if you kill a few more people, it doesn't matter at all. In his opinion, human life may not be worth as much as a bottle of beer in his hand. As long as you have the strength, you can have as much of that kind of thing as you want. But the familiar picture did not appear before. The young man was not afraid, nor begged for mercy. He didn't seem to notice the mace that was gradually falling behind him. The fingers that tapped the table were still regularly lifted from the table, then slowly fall thump. A crisp sound came out. Next second, Gildarts and Urza, who had planned to come to help, stopped in an instant. That was enough magic to amaze Gildarts. It exploded suddenly at this moment. All of a sudden, the overwhelming cold air poured out from Luo Xingchen's fingertips. The pure white ice crystals spread at a speed beyond what was visible to the naked eye. From seats to benches, from floor tiles to people standing, the dilapidated and stained tavern was at this moment. It turned directly into a world of ice and snow. But behind Luo Xingchen, Poulin Jeffrey, who had raised his mace, and the doglegs behind him didn't react at all, still maintaining the action that is about to attack. It was directly frozen into an ice sculpture. There was an indescribable look of horror on his face. Luo Xingchen slowly exhaled a cold breath, forming a layer of white mist in the air. The originally black broken hair and bangs were also stained with white ice crystals. Raise your eyes slightly. He looked at the tavern owner who had been sluggish in front of him. He reached out and gestured for the cup in his hand. Due to the influence of the cold, the juice in the glass has turned into ice cubes at this moment. The juice with ice cubes should taste better. Chapter 5 Fairy Tale? Oh, after Luo Xingchen's reminder, the tavern owner finally came to his senses. He frantically fiddled with the cup in his hand. Perhaps because of the surrounding cold, the entire body of the owner of the tavern was trembling at the moment. As a result, the cup in his hand was not held steady several times. Maybe it was because of the boy in front of him. After all, just for a moment, it will wipe out all the bandits who have been in this city for many years. This kind of person with great strength, even though he is only a teenager. But it's not something he can neglect. Luo Xingchen sighed helplessly and didn't care about the boss's actions. Instead, he turned to look at the group of people who were frozen into ice sculptures. Just when I was thinking about what to do with these guys, a lazy and casual voice came from beside him. Haha, I said that this young man is young and has strong magic power. The tall man with the crimson-haired girl came to Luo Xingchen and sat down carelessly. But because of Luo Xingchen's previous release of magic, the chair beside him was also covered with pure white frost. So much so that Gildarts felt a bone-chilling coldness as soon as he sat down. In an instant, Gildarts' pupils shrank. Even his teeth began to chatter involuntarily. As soon as you get older, you can't sit for a long time, he said. Gildarts stood up. His right hand unconsciously covered his butt. But didn't Gildarts say you were very young? Urza on the side tilted his head slightly, recalling what Gildarts had said before. Sure enough, children are really annoying. Gildarts muttered Urza silently. Luo Xingchen on the side twitched the corners of his mouth. This kind of clumsy acting is naturally impossible to deceive him. But he didn't say much. Instead, he looked at Gildarts. In terms of magic, your magic is truly amazing. You know, even though Luo Xingchen just released the magic, deliberately avoided the tavern owner, as well as these two people who obviously did not belong to bandits. But Luo Xingchen still noticed the middle-aged uncle at that moment to resist the magic power that burst out of the ice. It is no exaggeration to say that was definitely the strongest mage he had seen over the years. None of them. Therefore, Luo Xingchen has no intention of underestimating this middle-aged uncle. And even the crimson-haired girl beside her. Guess it's not that simple either. Thinking of this, Luo Xingchen couldn't help but sigh. As expected of a continent with extremely developed magic, as soon as I set foot, I met such a powerful wizard. But why does Crimson look familiar? With such a question, Luo Xingchen asked aloud. By the way, who are you? The wizard of fairy tale, Gildarts Clive. Gildarts smiled. It seems to be when fairy tale is introduced. There was unstoppable pride in his eyes. I'm also the wizard of fairy tale, Urza Scarlet. Please advise. Urza was much more normal, bowing slightly as he spoke. Do enough etiquette. Don't be so polite. In my hometown, shaking hands is more popular. Saying that, Luo Xingchen stretched out his hand. Luo Xingchen, please advise. Look at Luo Xingchen's outstretched palm. Urza was stunned for a moment, then quickly stretched out a small hand. Gildarts, who was watching this scene, couldn't help raising the corners of his aunt's mouth. I don't even know what's going on in that head. After retracting his palm, Luo Xingchen looked at the two people in front of him. There was a flash of understanding in his eyes. At the moment when the two of them introduced fairy tale, Luo Xingchen finally determined where he had traveled to. Fairy tale world. I remember that in my previous life, I followed anime for a while. But it's a pity that I didn't finish it. First, it was still being updated at that time. The second is just in time for high school. For Luo Xingchen, an orphan who will never find a way out if he doesn't study. You can only devote all your energy to your studies. Only in this way can we live up to the expectations of the orphanage. Therefore, I am not following this anime anymore. When his thoughts returned, Luo Xingchen was not too surprised. After all, there was a vague guess before, but it's only confirmed now. But even in the anime world, but in Luo Xingchen's eyes, it is also a real world. The people here are not ink drawn by cartoonists, but a real human being with flesh and blood. Just like in the past, what kind of attitude should I live with? It is enough to live with whatever attitude you have. Luo Xingchen doesn't have a last name. Urza asked his own question. From her point of view, Luo Xingchen is the same as she used to be. Only Urza's first name, not Scarlet's last name. This surname is a later friend. No, it is no longer a friend, but someone who counts as an enemy helped to get it. Luo Xingchen smiled helplessly. It's not like that. I'm for the Eastern continent. On our side, the surname is the first word. Therefore, my surname is Luo, and my name is Xingchen. This is not a lie. After all, in the Eastern continent, the name format of the people there is really like this. And when I crossed over, I was a child. It is true that he grew up in the Eastern continent. So that's it. Urza nodded silently. Then, realizing that she had just said something wrong, she bowed sharply. I'm really sorry, but I'll definitely remember it. Urza's expression was unusually serious. Luo Xingchen was a little overwhelmed. He quickly helped the girl up and said, You don't have to be so serious. I don't have any ideas. Haha, don't worry. Urza has such a personality. You'll get used to it after you've known him for a long time. The unscrupulous uncle on the side waved his hand. Oh yes, I almost forgot about this. His eyes turned to the bandits who were frozen to the side. Gildarts quickly restrained his smile. His expression became serious. Can these bandits be handed over to us to deal with? Chapter 6 Dark Guild, Deathwing Squeak. The dilapidated tavern door was slowly pushed open. Luo Xingchen, holding a juice glass, stepped out first, followed by the unscrupulous Uncle Gildarts he just met, and the Crimson Girl Urza, who takes everything seriously. In previous conversations, Gildarts proposed that he wanted a hand over the disposal of these bandits to himself. The main reason is because they want to be in the mouth of this group of bandits. Ask about the whereabouts of the Dark Guild Deathwing entrenched in this area. Just because Luo Xingchen caught the person. Gildarts naturally didn't think that Luo Xingchen would help himself and others for no reason. So it was proposed that it would be time to get paid later. Give a portion to Luo Xingchen. But Luo Xingchen refused. The reason is also very simple. Although money is very important to me, but there is one more important thing, that's this so-called Dark Union. As a sorcerer's guild that has fallen into darkness, there must be a lot of sorcerers in it, right? Rather than being able to gather power. What is money? At this moment, Luo Xingchen said, I am interested in Qian Mu. So Luo Xingchen made a request to participate in their mission. Gildarts asked Urza for advice. After all, this mission was Urza's first. Gildarts only brought Urza as a senior. Gildarts can point Urza during missions, but Urza had to nod for that sort of thing. However, Urza happily nodded in agreement. He even expressed his gratitude to Luo Xingchen for being willing to help him complete the task. within the scope of this girl's cognition. People like Luo Xingchen who were willing to help themselves without being paid. She hardly ever saw it, so much so in her heart. Labeled Luo Xingchen as a good guy. So there was this scene. That Xingchen really appreciates your willingness to help me. Urza had even walked outside the door, not forgetting to thank him again. Actually, I have my own purpose. You don't need to care too much. Luo Xingchen twitched the corners of his mouth. It is true that this girl has thanked her no less than 5 times from the inside of the tavern to the outside. Luo Xingchen didn't know how to respond. By the way, it shouldn't matter if I call you Xingchen, because in this continent, people are used to calling you by first name, not last name. Suddenly Urza thought of something and explained it out loud. That doesn't matter. The name is just a code name. Luo Xingchen waved his hand, indicating that he didn't care. Oh, that's fine. Urza nodded slightly. Then he took out a map from the bag of the pleated skirt. Perhaps because of the small size of the bag, the map has been crumpled. Urza pouted in dissatisfaction. It seems that you still have to bring a suitcase when going out in the future. Otherwise, there is no place to put things. After muttering a few words, Urza unfolded the map. Pointing to a circled point above, he said, "This is the town of Santa Cassia, which is where we are." After speaking, he pointed his finger to the mountain range marked with the words Nicaro. Here is what the bandits said, the approximate location of Deathwing. But this mountain is so huge that we can't find it at all. Saying that, Urza frowned. Different from the cuteness just now, perhaps it is a relationship that has entered a working state. Urza's face was serious at the moment. Didn't the bandits say it? At the end of every month, the bandits in this area will pay protection fees to those guys. Luo Xingchen, who was leaning against the wall, spoke up. That's called a membership fee. To be blessed by the Dark Guild, you have to pay a price. Guildarts corrected Luo Xingchen's words. The nature is the same. Luo Xingchen took a step, handed the empty glass in his hand to Guildarts. Please help me deal with it. Thank you. Saying that, Luo Xingchen didn't pay any attention to Guildart's surprised eyes. He turned around and came to Urza, taking the map. If there is no mistake, tomorrow is the time to pay the protection fee. Those guys will send people to this place to collect protection fees from these bandits. I think we can make a fuss here. While talking, Luo Xingchen's hand pointed to the small village called Rizzo next to Santa Cassia. A smile appeared on his face. Let that bandit boss sneak in with us, and then follow the vines and hit the yellow dragon. The time came to the next morning. Luo Xingchen and Urza are at the forefront. A listless Guildarts followed, because yesterday did not find a suitable hotel to stay in. Therefore, Luo Xingchen and others had no choice but to set up tents in the forest outside the town for a simple night. Just considering that Luo Xingchen and Urza are both children, and also brought the bully bandit boss. Therefore, the oldest Uncle Guildarts had to choose to keep the vigil by himself. So this scene happened. I could already see it, Rosso Village. Luo Xingchen, who was advancing, suddenly stopped. He looked at the dilapidated village in front of him. It's hard to imagine that the dignified Dark Guild would choose such a place to trade. Urza murmured, after all, it is a mouse in the dark. If it is swaggering, it is not called a mouse. Luo Xingchen, who was on the side, said, and looked at the bandit boss Perlin Jeffrey. Smile, but like a devil. Then trouble you. For now on we are your little brother. Seeing Luo Xingchen's expression, Perlin Jeffrey, who was tied up with 5 flowers, was about to cry. He wanted to say something. Is there such a kid who kidnaps the boss? Chapter 7, They Can't Get Out of This Village. The village of Rizzo is a village even more remote than the town of Santa Cassia. It's so remote that few people come here. As a result, there are only a dozen or so Aboriginal families living in this village. But today, the small village that should have been deserted to the extreme. Today, there's a lot of anger. Bandits from various nearby areas converged here today. Loud noises echoed in this mountain village, accompanied by scolding from time to time. Perhaps an abnormal relationship is perceived. Residents of the village are all locked out of their homes. Even the bankers dare not go out to sow seeds. Luo Xingchen and Urza and Guildarts, after some disguise, got in here with Pran Jeffrey. Along the way, there were also some people who were familiar with Pran Jeffrey and said hello, and also made fun of why Pran Jeffrey today even brought two little kids here. Feel the death gaze coming from behind. Pran Jeffrey had to respond to the crowd with a smile that was uglier than crying. Very good. Don't talk nonsense with these guys. Take us to our destination quickly. Luo Xingchen, who was behind him, threatened softly. I understand. Pran Jeffrey nodded silently. Soon under his leadership, Luo Xingchen and others came to the central square of the village. At this time, there were already many people gathered here. But since Deathwing's people haven't arrived yet, therefore, the bandits began to whisper here. By the way, I've heard that you kidnapped a rich lady recently and made a fortune. Haha, where is it? It's just luck. It's you. How's your business going? Hey, don't mention it. There aren't many children we can catch during this time. I don't know how to explain to the adults of Deathwing. What are you? My mining farm has been exhausted by a dozen people recently, which has slowed down the progress of the recent magic crystal mining. The pariahs are really weak, and now I don't know how to explain. Listening to the constant discussions around, Urza clenched his fists tightly. His eyes seemed to be burning with anger. He seemed to think of what had happened to him in the past. If it weren't for the Avatar guys, they would have taken themselves. Maybe. I want to experience the pain of Tower of Heaven. These guys really do all kinds of evil, even arresting children. Damn it. Urza raised his head sharply at the moment when he was about to sacrifice the blood of this group of people onto the sword. Luo Xingchen stopped Urza. He whispered in her ear, "Don't be impulsive. If you take action now, you will probably startle the snake. If you don't find the source behind it, even if this group of people kills one batch, there will be another batch, understand?" Hearing Luo Xingchen's words, Urza pursed his lips. Finally he endured. "I'm sorry, I almost did something bad." She apologized softly. Smiling slightly, Luo Xingchen rubbed the girl's long crimson hair naturally. He spoke slowly. "Don't worry, won't be able to leave this village today." Gildarts, who was on the side, did not participate in the discussion between the two. Listen to the conversation just now. The experienced uncle immediately noticed something was wrong. To know, follow the description of the task principle. Deathwing should not be a powerful sorcerer's guild. However, after a preliminary understanding, he found out this guild is not only involved in extortion and kidnapping of children, even has a magic crystal vein. All this proves that this so-called Deathwing, not the weak guild you imagined. It is possible that there may be S-rank mages in this guild. Looks like the information is wrong. Gildarts narrowed his eyes and murmured. As time passed slowly, without making Luo Xingchen and others wait long, the people of Deathwing appeared in this square. The visitor was a middle-aged bald man. Once here, there is not much nonsense. The middle-aged man immediately started asking everyone a hand in their protection fees. According to the different incidents involved in each bandit group, the things handed in are also different. But most of them are money and magic crystals and so on. Soon it was plain Jeffrey's turn. Pran Jeffrey, who brought Luo Xingchen and others, walked forward tremblingly. Looking at Pran Jeffrey like this, the middle-aged bald man frowned slightly. What? Didn't you make enough money raised? The dull tone seemed to reveal an imperceptible crisis. Pran Jeffrey was stunned for a while, then quickly said that, His eyes turned to the few people behind him, his eyes filled with pleading. What exactly are you trying to say? The middle-aged man was slightly angry. There were even strands of blue veins bursting out of the head without the slightest hair. What he wants to say is that your end has come. A slightly immature voice came from behind Pran Jeffrey. Luo Xingchen then waved and threw Pran Jeffrey aside. At the same time, Urza quickly drew the long sword from his waist and pointed it at the middle-aged man's throat. Quick, too fast. It was almost time when no one at the scene responded. The girl holds the power of life and death for middle-aged men. Master Baker. Suddenly, countless shouts came from below when it was discovered that the people holding the messenger sent by Deathwing turned out to be two children. This group of bandits, who were always licking blood on the knife edge, instantly became angry. Damn it. What do you want to do? You little brats, aren't you afraid of death? Let's go together and rescue Lord Baker. What's the hurry? Your accounts haven't been settled yet. Luo Xingchen frowned slightly. Raising his arm, he snapped his fingers suddenly. In the next second, endless cold air suddenly poured out. The white ice crystals spread rapidly towards the outside world with Luo Xingchen as the center. The voice that was still clamoring just now stopped abruptly. For a moment, the world seemed to be quiet. All that remains is a white statue that looks like a work of art. Chapter 8 come to the door. The battle is about to start. I heard your name is Baker, right? After freezing a group of miscellaneous soldiers, Luo Xingchen came to the middle-aged bald man. At this moment, he has long lost his previous lofty attitude. Yu Guang twitched the sharp sword flashing coldly around his neck. He secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. I want to reach out and push the blade away, but under Urza's fierce eyes, in the end, this unrealistic idea was abandoned. You, what do you want to do? Maybe it was because of fear. Baker's voice trembled a little. You should be a member of Devouring, right? Luo Xingchen squinted the black winged coat of arms on Baker's neck. Baker nodded slightly. That's good. We want to visit your guild, so please show us the way. Luo Xingchen said with a smile. Visit? Who are you? Baker frowned and asked. The wizard of fairy tale. Urza's sword moved forward again. But in an instant, Baker broke into a cold sweat. So, you better take us there obediently, otherwise. The sword seemed to cut through the skin. The oozing blood immediately dyed the sword red. At this moment, Baker seemed to have seen death. That touch of icy cold, no exaggeration, will be this crimson-haired girl. It's a real killer move. Okay, I'll take you there. Baker hurriedly shouted. Upon seeing this, Urza slightly loosened the blade in his hand. He breathed heavily, while his life was temporarily worry-free. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Let's go. I'm still in a hurry to get everything done before the sun goes down today. Luo Xingchen motioned for him to walk ahead. Threatened by Urza's sword, Baker rose to his feet. He looked at the people in front of him. For their purpose, a little thought will be able to understand. 80% of the time, it was someone who went into trouble with Devouring. So he said, you can't win. That's a guild. A guild assembled by sorcerers is not something that ordinary people can compare to. You'd better worry about yourself first, if you can't find it before the sun goes down today. Having said that, Luo Xingchen paused. Senrin's cold air began to spread in his hands. Then you are in big trouble. After a beating, Luo Xingchen looked at guildarts. By the way, what about the guys like Uncle? He pointed to a group of bandits who had been turned into ice sculptures. Dad, Uncle, guildarts didn't seem to hear Luo Xingchen's question. The whole person is a little lost. Luo Xingchen was confused, quietly put his head next to Urza, and asked softly, what's up with him? Guildarts doesn't seem to like being called uncle or something, Urza replied. Oh, Luo Xingchen nodded knowingly. Don't worry, uncle. I will pay attention. Luo Xingchen patted Guildart's arm with a smile. Guildarts twitched the corners of his mouth. He didn't know how to respond. There was even some self-doubt. Could it be that he has really reached the age of an uncle? Shaking his head, Guildarts wasn't struggling with that. Instead, he looked at the crowd in front of him, said, your eyes should be able to freeze for a long time, right? About a year and a half. Luo Xingchen touched his chin and thought for a while, then replied, however, if it really happened then, people would be dead long ago. Generally, if necessary, I can take the initiative to unfreeze it. Hearing this, Guildarts nodded and said, it's easy to handle. When the time comes, I will contact the Fiori Kingdom Army to take in this group of people, including the group of bandits you solved in the tavern. Moreover, you will also get a lot of money. After all, you are helping the Kingdom of Fiori get rid of the evil, and the royal family will definitely reward it. It seems that the Fiori royal family is very reasonable. Luo Xingchen smiled. Although in his opinion money is not the most important thing, but it has to be on the premise of maintaining a normal life. Therefore, since everyone else has come over, there is no reason to refuse. While chatting like this, several people moved towards the Nicarlo Mountains. There are still 4. It's just that the guy who was kidnapped changed from Pran Jeffrey to Baker. Nicolo Mountains. On a mountain that nobody cares about. The winding path leads to a weed-shrouded cave entrance. The cave is very big, but because of the dark light, can't see what's inside. But if you stand at the mouth of the cave, however, he could faintly hear the echo of the noise coming from the inside. It's hard to imagine that there will be traces of people in such a place. But precisely because of this, it was here that Deathwing chose to be the headquarters of the guild, because only such a no-man's land can completely hide himself. Inside the cave, different from the barrenness of the outside world, it is still decorated here. Seats, benches, bar drinks, etc. There are basically things in a normal guild here. The huge space seems to have dug a big hole inside the mountain, since there is no recent activity. Therefore, hundreds of people in the guild are basically gathered here, chatting and spanking. By the way, why hasn't Baker returned at this time? A sturdy man looked at the time and said, "The man's name is Ella, the first person under the president of Deathwing. At the same time, he is also the strongest in the guild, with strong muscles covering his 2-meter-high body." The rough voice was as fierce as a beast. Maybe it was delayed on the way, but I don't know how much money those guys handed in this month. One person in the guild kept rubbing his hands, his face filled with excitement. For the group of them who have already put their life and death aside, I'm afraid only money can make them excited. Why don't I go and have a look? Maybe there are too many things and I can't lift them? Huh, one member said, half jokingly. Ella nodded slightly. After all, even he felt that something was wrong with Baker hadn't come back yet. Upon seeing this, the member stood up. He took a step and walked towards the door of the cave. Just approaching the gate, the member was keenly aware of the sound outside the gate. "Did you come back?" With such doubts, the member walked forward. "I just touched the door with my hand." Boom! The gate built and the cave shattered. The huge impact even directly knocked the member into the air. With a puzzled face, he saw the culprit who broke the door. Baker. It should be said that Baker's body broke through the door, because at this moment, he is flying at the same level as himself. The two flew towards the inside of the cave together. At the entrance of the cave, Luo Xingchen retracted the kicked right foot. A smile rose in the corners of his mouth. It's really hard to find the guild headquarters of Deathwing. The 9th chapter is really looking forward to it. The sudden appearance of several figures shocked everyone. The two of them looked at their guild, who fell heavily on the ground. Ella seemed to have reacted, and her face gradually burst into blue veins. That's a precursor to anger. He didn't ask Baker, who was lying on the ground, what was the reason for this. For them, the reason doesn't matter. Whether they take the initiative to provoke others, or others take the initiative to offend. What matters is the result. The result now is that others have provocatively come to the door. Then he couldn't keep silent. He looked at the 3 figures at the entrance of the cave. 2 children and a sloppy middle-aged man. Ella was about to laugh angrily. When had he seen him alone with 2 little brats dare to come to trouble their guild? But now I see it, right in front of his eyes. This not only made him sigh that there are people in this world who are not afraid of death. I said, "Do you know what you're doing?" Ella, with a low face, spoke slowly. Boom! Ella's fist, as big as a sandbag, fell on the table in front of her. "Do you know what the consequences are?" Ella glared at several people, as if tearing them to pieces. "Why do you need so much nonsense to deal with a mere 3 people? Just kill it. Wait a minute, that chick looks pretty good. Or if the chick stays, maybe she'll be a beauty when she grows up." The voice of a member of the Deathwing Guild just fell. The originally quiet guild immediately boiled over. Hundreds of sorcerers opened their mouths one after another. There was wanton laughter. Some even raised the wine glass in their hands and sipped happily. As expected, it is a guild that is outside the rules. The mention of murder, women, money, and the like can instantly arouse their beastly desires. Urza listened quietly to the group's discussion. It's just that the little face has gradually become gloomy at some point. The clenched fist is open. A crimson magic circle appeared in her hand. In the next second, a long sword more than 1 meter long appeared in her hand, although the height of the long sword has even reached Urza's shoulders. But she held it without the slightest sense of disobedience, as if she was born to be a sword. Holding the hilt tightly, Urza slowly raised his head. "If no one teaches you how to respect people, then I will teach you." Urza's voice just fell. The scene suddenly fell silent. Countless people looked at each other in disbelief, as if they had heard a joke. The next second, everyone burst into laughter. When can a little kid be able to talk nonsense here? It's so funny. Ella smiled disdainfully and shook her neck that had not moved for a long time. There was a crackling sound. President, can I take action? Ella licked the corners of her chapped mouth. His eyes turned to the shadow behind him. In the place shrouded in black, there was only a vague figure leaning against it. Clean it up. A lazy voice came from the dark corner. His unwavering tone seemed to reveal his disregard for life. Understood. Ella's smile gradually became excited. Magical power began to flow out of the body. The already tall body began to swell rapidly. Pieces of angular muscle propped up his shirt. One by one, blood vessels burst out from the surface of the skin. There was a loud noise with every heavy breath. Enhancing the magic of his own shape, his blood boils. All-round magic that can strengthen one's physical strength, defense, and attack in a short period of time. Two wisps of blue smoke came out of his nostrils. Ella stomped on the ground with both feet, and the man charged towards Luo Xingchen and the others like a beast. Shaking his arms, Luo Xingchen was about to go forward to meet him. But there is someone faster than him. Urza. He looked at the crimson figure, who quickly passed him with the sword in hand. Luo Xingchen was a little stunned. Blinking his eyes, he looked at Gildarts. Are you okay? At this moment, Gildarts was holding his arms in his arms, and he still had no intention of making any move. Looking at the two people, one big and one small, who had been confronting each other in an instant, they smiled slightly. Don't underestimate Urza. She's very strong. Luo Xingchen certainly knows that Urza is strong. It can even rank in the forefront of all the wizards in fairy tale. But that's after the armor that can be changed in the future. But now Urza, after 2 days of Luo Xingchen's understanding. Urza just joined the guild not long ago. This is the first mission. Where can I get the money to build armor? Don't worry, that guy is still in Urza's range or something. Gildarts waved his hand. As he had seen Urza fight in the guild, it's a bit of understanding where Urza's limits are. So he's not worried yet. However, I think you should feel that the man hiding in the shadows is the most troublesome. Gildarts glanced into the darkness at the end of his vision. Of course. Luo Xingchen nodded and said, leave that guy to me. The corners of his mouth slowly evoked a smile. I'm very interested in him. After that, Luo Xingchen stepped forward and walked towards the crowd of hundreds of mages in front of him. As for Gildarts, he leaned against the wall quietly with his arms around him, obviously not going to make a move. Originally, this mission was so out of line that he made up his mind to take the lead in solving the so-called chairman. But after seeing Luo Xingchen's confident expression, he changed his mind. Luo Xingchen's powerful magic, he had seen the tip of the iceberg. Therefore, he wanted to know, Luo Xingchen, a 12 or 13-year-old boy, how powerful is it? Gildarts slowly raised a smile. Young teenagers and girls. I'm really looking forward to it. Chapter 10, Extremely Ice Dragon Slayer Magic. What do you mean? Is a kid like facing our entire guild? Watching Gildarts lean back leisurely, and Luo Xingchen, who was less than their shoulder height, walked towards them alone. Except for El, who was already fighting with Urza. Everyone was stunned. What are you kidding? Since you want to die so much, then I will fulfill you. Someone roared. In an instant, everyone agreed. They all picked up the magic tools in their hands and rushed towards Luo Xingchen one after another. Stars! Not far away, Urza, who was fighting El, put the blade in front of him and blocked El's punch. Sensing the situation on the other side, she immediately exclaimed, Don't worry about me. Focus on your battle. Luo Xingchen said without looking back. Facing the front, almost invisible crowd, he moved forward without even the slightest hesitation. Slowly raising his right hand, the golden light began to flicker in the palm of his hand. And in the center of that dazzling light, the golden emblem appeared. The center of the badge is engraved with an ice blue dragon. The dragon's wings were raised high, and its hideous head was facing the sky, as if it was roaring. And below the dragon, the 4 characters Extreme Ice and Dragon Slayer seem to have a strange magic that can immediately attract everyone's attention. A brilliant golden pattern wraps around the edge of the badge. It seems to be showing its strongest noble level. Usually, if you just use a little power, you don't need a fusion badge. Just borrow it directly to use it. But if you want to unlock the full power of the badge, you must completely integrate it with yourself. According to Luo Xingchen's understanding, fusion badges are equivalent to integrating the badges into themselves as an independent source of magic. This frees up all the power contained within the source of magic. Play with the Ice Dragon Slayer badge with one hand. Luo Xingchen's expression did not change. But this indifferent attitude completely angered the wizards who rushed up. Unbearable. In the face of hundreds of wizards, this guy has no fear at all? Damn it, kid. I'll make you cry and beg for mercy. The burly man who rushed to the front with the giant sword on his back roared angrily. Having approached Luo Xingchen within 10 meters, he jumped up abruptly. The great sword in his hand was raised high by him. The same moment, Luo Xingchen stopped the magic crystal badge he was playing with. Then it bounced high. Wham! The golden magic circle spreads out inside the badge. The dazzling light shines on Luo Xingchen below. The magic that contains the meaning of extreme cold is constantly climbing in his body. Even ice blue dragon scales began to appear on his cheeks. And now, the giant sword pierced through the air and slashed straight at Luo Xingchen's head with enormous force. Ice crystals cling to Luo Xingchen's palm. Without any hesitation, Luo Xingchen reached out and stopped the giant sword. Boom! The huge force rolled up waves of air, blowing the smoke and dust around. But it was beyond everyone's expectations. It was such a blow that it failed to shake Luo Xingchen's body in the slightest. Click, click! The huge giant sword was frozen by the cold air, and then the cracks spread like a spider web. Luo Xingchen's palm slammed hard. Boom! Like shards of broken glass, the giant sword instantly shattered into tiny ice crystals. The burly man who lost his support point was startled, and his entire body staggered. Luo Xingchen's right foot was lifted up, and the whole body was slightly sideways. Provides more power storage space for kicks. Next second, boom! Luo Xingchen's right foot directly kicked the burly man's abdomen. His eyes protruded suddenly. His mouth opened involuntarily. It was even accompanied by some unknown liquid. His whole body is curved in a bow shape. Unspeakable pain filled his body. Ah! With a whimper that stirs up pain, the burly man flew back faster than before. Along the way, it directly overturned the crowd that followed closely behind. For a time, screams and wailing echoed through the airtight cave along with the dancing people. The sudden appearance shocked some lucky people who were not affected. They all stopped. His wide eyes looked towards the position of the burly man who fell behind. At this moment, he was completely unable to move. I don't know where the ice crystals began to spread little by little in the belly of the burly man. Even ice crystals began to appear on the people who were affected by the burly man. After a while, someone said, "Just kidding. What's going on with this guy? Will even indirect contact be frozen?" Luo Xingchen withdrew his right foot and spoke in a flat tone. Every blow of the extreme ice dragon will bring an unimaginable chill. If you touch it rashly, there will be unpredictable consequences. The members of Devouring began to panic. This little devil who doesn't know the depths seems to be extremely dangerous. What a useless bunch of guys. An angry shout came from the depths of the darkness behind. The members who were stunned in place all shuddered. They know that their president. Angry already. There seemed to be crisp footsteps from the depths of the darkness. Every sound was accompanied by powerful magic power raging around. The figure gradually came to the place where the light could illuminate. It was an extremely thin old man. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is skinny, just like a person who has just recovered from serious illness. The whole person is a skeleton covered in skin. It is hard to imagine that such a person would become the president of the Dark Guild. Will be the object of fear. Luo Xingchen raised his eyebrows and said, "I wanted to find you out myself, but now it seems that you can't sit still anymore." Chapter 11, Comprehensive Crushing. Can't sit still? Maybe, in the final analysis, it's just that these guys are too weak. Fern Roy, the president of Devouring, slightly brushed aside the crowd. The wizards who were staring at him lowered their heads. Don't dare to look at it. Therefore, if I can't stand it, I'm going to solve you myself. Fern said slowly. There is confidence in the old tone. A strange smile appeared on his wrinkled cheeks. Turning his head slightly, Luo Xingchen said, It seems you are quite sure this is going to try. Fern raised his palm. Blood-red energy gathered in his hand. Call out. Blood-red rays like lasers shot out. The speed is even outrageous. Gildarts, who was watching from a distance, frowned tightly at this moment. You can't be wrong. This guy definitely has S-rank strength. Looking at Luo Xingchen, he murmured in a low voice, Young brat, is there a way to deal with it? The body that had been leaning against the wall straightened up. Gildart's face was serious. After all, Luo Xingchen was facing an S-class enemy alone, although it is not as strict as the S-class defined by fairy tale. However, it must not be underestimated. Therefore, Gildarts also cheered up, and if Luo Xingchen lost, he could help. It's not that he doesn't like him. On the contrary, Gildarts has great expectations for young people like Luo Xingchen. But now Luo Xingchen is still too small. At such an age, it is no exaggeration to say that almost no one has reached the height of Luo Xingchen in the past 100 years. Blood-red beams approached, because the body has been transformed into a dragon's physique. Luo Xingchen could smell the blood in the beam with his sensitive nose. This guy's magic is a bit special. After coming to this conclusion in my heart, Luo Xingchen's eyes narrowed. The cold air burst out violently. Next moment, the blood-red light beam that was heading straight for Luo Xingchen seemed to have encountered some kind of resistance. It's getting slower and slower, slower and slower, until it stops in front of Luo Xingchen. Looking at this scene, Fern was stunned. Blood, Luo Xingchen said, looking directly at Fern. Your magic contains blood, so it is not difficult to freeze. What an amazing insight, what a horrible kid. At this moment, even Fern couldn't help but exclaim. But that doesn't mean he will stop attacking. The legs were slightly bent, and the thin calf began to bulge, as if there was something between the bones and the skin that wanted to break out of the skin. At the same time, the magnitude of Fern's bending started to get lower and lower, until it bottomed out and then bounced back suddenly. The powerful recoil directly boosted Fern's speed to an extreme. In just a split second, Fern came to Luo Xingchen. The right fist was clenched, and the bulge that had just swelled near the calf appeared above his arm. The clenched fist swelled to the same size as Luo Xingchen in an instant, then crashed down. Almost instinctively, Luo Xingchen raised his arm and slammed it. Two fists, one big and one small, collided directly. The ground beneath Luo Xingchen's feet began to shatter, and the raised stones were blooming like flowers. But Luo Xingchen's body remained motionless. There was surprise in Fern's eyes. He gritted his teeth, and the veins on his forehead burst out. It seems that even the strength of feeding milk is used up, but even this can't bend the back of this young man. Is it only this level? Luo Xingchen raised his head. The mockery in his eyes was clearly visible. Not even a child can compare. Luo Xingchen stepped forward and swung his right arm vigorously. A shocking scene happened. The originally small fist, however, repelled the fist as tall as Luo Xingchen's body. With horror and unspeakable anger in Flo's eyes, the whole body took 2 steps back uncontrollably. Damn brat. He stopped backing, and Fern, who couldn't believe the situation, attacked again. The arm swelled even more. This time, he will completely smash the little ghost in front of him into meat patties. The huge fist blocked Luo Xingchen's sight. Extreme Ice Dragon's broken tooth. Shaking hands in a claws, Luo Xingchen stepped back to avoid the punch, and the dragon claws swung down. Puff! This is the sound of flesh being cut open and blood gushing out. The other hand was raised and grabbed towards the blood that shot out. The next moment, the originally hot blood was under the chill of Luo Xingchen's palm. In an instant, it condensed into ice ridges. As soon as he turned around, Luo Xingchen passed the huge fist. The blood-red ice ridge in his hand plunged directly into Fern's chest, which was briefly stunned by the pain. Fern's eyes widened. The severe pain that had not dissipated just now increased again. However, Luo Xingchen has not stopped. The palm inserted into Bing Ling grabbed it and grabbed Fern's neck directly. The arm suddenly exerted force and directly threw Fern into the air with his huge fist. The right foot took a step back, and the tip of the toe drew a small ice surface on the ground. Extreme Ice Dragon's broken claw. The target was aimed at Fern, who fell in the sky, and his right foot was kicked straight out. Boom! The right leg wrapped an ice kick directly on the blood-red ice edge on Fern's body that was not fully inserted. Under the action of this terrifying force, the blood-red ice edge directly penetrated Fern's body, causing a huge blood hole about 10 centimeters in diameter. The huge force of the kick directly made Fern fly out at a very fast speed. This familiar pose. It was the same gesture of the weak man he just said he looked down on. Even faster than that. Go even further. Boom! Fern's body slammed into the wall of the cave. The wall shattered instantly, and countless rubble flew. The smoke and dust that filled the air seemed to completely drown the huge cave. Chapter 12, Article 2, A New Life Quiet. Deathly silence. Countless Deathwing mages stared blankly at Fern, who was silent in the ruins. They couldn't believe that their own president would lose, and it's been crushed from beginning to end. And Luo Xingchen's face, who had done all this, still didn't change. It was as if he had done something trivial. The other side, the battle for Urza, was also drawing to a close. Although the current Urza has no armor blessing, but its own magic has far surpassed its peers. And his own swordsmanship is also under the serious training every day without slack, become extremely powerful. As Gildart said, perhaps the current Urza versus Fern will be completely suppressed. But against Ella, who is much weaker than Fern, there is no problem at all. BD, Ella growled angrily. At the moment, he is not in a good state. The bloody scar on the left arm is still flowing with hot blood. For him, who uses blood magic, the loss of blood will greatly reduce his combat effectiveness. With only one hand moving, he clenched his fist and waved it wildly. He had already lost his mind because of his anger. Even the basic combat literacy has long been forgotten. On the other hand, Urza is completely different, whether it's the timing of swinging the sword or the timing of dodging. Urza was firmly in his mind. Sideways dodged the punch of an angry Ella. Urza clenched the sword in both hands. Magic power was injected into the sharp sword madly, causing it to emit a faint light. Urza raised his eyes sharply. She swung her last sword towards Ella, whose weaknesses were all exposed because of her madness. Moon flash. Urza's speed was ramped up to the limit at this moment. In just an instant, he appeared behind Ella. The scar of the cross appeared on Ella's chest. Blood sprayed out. Ella's wildly waving arms stopped. The excruciating pain in his chest eventually overcame the anger. The originally scarlet eyes gradually became clearer, but the heavy injury no longer allowed him to stand up. Boom! With a dull sound, Ella fell to the ground. Luo Xingchen smiled at Urza at the moment. Even Luo Xingchen had to admit it. Urza really deserves to be the fairy queen in the future. This fighting talent is definitely beyond the reach of ordinary people. Of course, the most important thing is always Urza's unwavering heart. Nice job, Urza! Facing Urza, who returned from victory, Luo Xingchen sent praise. Look at the boy in front of you. Urza blushes rarely. Maybe this girl is getting such a compliment for the first time, so she is not used to it. Scratched his head and said, "Where compared to you, I'm still far behind." This is not a polite speech. Although he was just fighting with Ella, Urza was still watching the battlefield on Luo Xingchen's side. Hundreds of mages and guild leaders. All were solved effortlessly by one of them. At this point, Urza thinks he can't do it. It's not over yet. While the two were talking, a sudden voice interrupted Luo Xingchen's conversation with Urza. This guy, Luo Xingchen, turned his gaze towards the direction of the voice. That was Fern, who had just been defeated by Luo Xingchen. At this moment, the whole body was tattered, and even the abdomen that was originally covered with ice crystals appeared a large area of bloody injuries. Obviously, in order not to be frozen by the spreading ice crystals. He chose to tear off the ice crystals along with the frozen flesh, although the whole body is attacked by pain. But he still gritted his teeth while no one noticed. Climbed to Ella's side. An excited smile appeared on his old, blood-stained face. Like a ghost. "What are you trying to do?" Urza seemed to sense something was wrong and immediately shouted. "What he?" Fern raised his head. "Damn little devils. Of course I'm sending you to hell." As he spoke, he raised his palm and stabbed Ella's back fiercely. Whoa, Ella, who was already seriously injured, suddenly let out a hysterical cry. His skin was wrinkling slightly at a speed visible to the naked eye. And Fern's arm, which was inserted into Ella's body, also had regular agitation. It's like a rubber hose is pumping a stream of water. Fern's arm is now the water pipe. Ella's blood is water. Ella raised her trembling arm in pain. "No, don't. The screaming stopped abruptly. Ella's body has been completely turned into a mummified corpse. It was as if there was not a single drop of blood in his body. But at this moment, Fern has changed a lot. The originally scrawny body has returned to the appearance of a normal person with strong muscles and full of muscles. Fern stood up slowly, and the wound on his abdomen was repaired by blood. Restored. He licked the corner of his mouth slightly, as if he was aftertastes. Delicious aftertaste of Ella's blood. "What the hell did you do?" Urza gritted his teeth. Angry veins burst out on his forehead. "What?" Fern smiled slowly. "Of course I'm taking back what belongs to me." Looking at Ella, who has completely lost her life, there was no trace of regret on Fern's face. "I taught this human magic. Do you know why? Because that is the magic extended from my power, origin of blood. Every time I use it, the blood in his body will be further assimilated into my blood." Having said that, he paused. "As for why you do this?" Looking at Luo Xingchen. "Of course, to prevent meeting someone like you one day. In order to have a second life. So you didn't hesitate to deprive the life of your companion who was born and died for you." Luo Xingchen's tone was a little cold. Chillingly cold. Chapter 13, Demons and Dragons. Luo Xingchen's eyes were fixed on Fern. Not for Ella's grievances. It's just that this guy's behavior makes Luo Xingchen disliked. That's all. "I have no companions, and I don't think mere humans can be my companions." Fern spread his hands and spoke indifferently. "A mere human?" Urza frowned. Asked, "So you are not human?" Speaking of this, Fern smiled disdainfully. "Of course, for you humans, it can be understood as a demon." The fangs in his mouth slowly grew, making his face even more hideous. "The devil in the book of Zirif." The voice just fell. Luo Xingchen, Urza, and even Gildarts, who were watching the game from behind, were stunned. Luo Xingchen was surprised that he had just come to this continent. It came across something like the Book of Zirif. And Urza is because of the 3 words Zirif. These 3 words can be said to be the main culprits for her childhood tragedy. Gildarts looked serious and muttered to himself, "I really didn't expect. This small guild actually has the negative legacy in the Book of Zirif. No, this is no longer a small guild. It is no exaggeration to say this matter has risen to the point of alarming the council. If you didn't follow me, with Urza alone, it's absolutely impossible. It may even cost her life." Of course, with Luo Xingchen here, Gildarts is not panicking. After all, in the battle just now, the strength of this demon is not relatively strong. Luo Xingchen can completely crush him by himself. Thinking of this, Gildarts shook his head and sighed. Young people today are really perverted. However, it also made Gildarts think carefully. Staring at Luo Xingchen's back, he slowly smiled. A little obscene, Luo Xingchen was the first to come back to his senses after a short period of surprise. He immediately regained his dull expression. Looking straight at Fern, "I don't know if this Mr. Demon has a third life." Luo Xingchen's magic began to gather in his hands. The cold air is constantly pervading. At extremely low temperatures, even white ice crystals began to appear in the air. Even the opposite Fern shivered involuntarily. "I didn't plan to fight with you like this, although using that move will bring a lot of load." As he said that, His eyes glanced aside because he was already afraid, and the members of the Deathwing Guild hiding in the corner. He narrowed his eyes slightly. At this moment, everyone shuddered. In the face of Ella's death just now, no one could keep calm. Speaking of which, you have relied on my strength over the years, and you have also enjoyed a lot of blessings. It's time for you to repay me. Fern sneered. The sturdy body began to wriggle. The countless tentacles that couldn't be found in humans ripped through Fern's skin. The next second, countless tentacles swaying slammed out in all directions. In the face of this all-round attack, Luo Xingchen's pupils shrank suddenly. Without the slightest hesitation, he immediately turned around and hugged Urza away from the spot. Immediately after, several extremely fast tentacles penetrated the ground where Luo Xingchen and Urza were standing. Luo Xingchen stopped and confirmed that Urza was all right. Raised arms swing down. The ice blades, condensed by the cold air, directly chopped up all the tentacles that were about to attack. But the Wizards of Deathwing on the other side are not so good. The rushing tentacles directly penetrated their bodies. No, President, we didn't learn Ella's magic. Why? I don't want to die. The suction cups on the tentacles began to absorb the blood of the Deathwing Wizards. A steady stream of blood poured into Fern's body. His face also became extremely ferocious, as if suffering from some pain. That's right, absorbing blood that is different from mine will have great side effects. Fern gritted his teeth and said, but it can also bring extremely powerful power in a short period of time. The soaring blood in his body made his entire body swell rapidly. Only then can I kill this damn kid. Let you see the true power of blood boiling. Fern's mouth widened and he roared. Ugh! The screams gradually turned into roars, roaring like an angry beast. The muscles in his upper extremities swelled to an exaggerated level. A sharp horn grew on his forehead. Sharp claws grew on both hands and feet, and scales appeared on the skin. The whole person was lying on the ground, from the original way of standing on both feet, converted to a way of crawling on all fours. In the eyes that represent rationality are gradually occupied by crazy scarlet. Demon eyes. Gildarts uttered the name in a deep voice. Moreover, he seems to have completely lost his mind because he absorbed blood different from his own. That is to say, run away. This guy, Urza clenched the sword in his hand, looking at Luo Xingchen, who was on the side. Let's go together. However, Luo Xingchen just shook his head. He said softly, just let me come. I'm getting more and more interested in this guy. Urza didn't quite understand what Luo Xingchen meant. But Luo Xingchen did not explain, just watching Fern, who has been completely demonized, move. You hide away first. Luo Xingchen's voice came from the front. Hey kid, are you all right? Cried Gildarts at the gate. Luo Xingchen turned his back to the two and shook his hand. Leave it to me. Obviously a little immature, but for some reason, it is so convincing. Gildarts smiled. This guy, Luo Xingchen came to the front of Fern and stopped, watching the ground keep pounding at the moment. Fern, who has fallen into madness. Ho ho ho. A hysterical roar spoke of the monster's rage. Scarlet eyes stared at Luo Xingchen. His feet shrank. The entire body was ejected. Due to running on 4 feet, Fern's speed at this moment has even surpassed the previous countless times. With every step, the ground is shattered, causing a burst of smoke and dust. The strong wind blew the black hair in front of Luo Xingchen's forehead. In just a split second, Fern came to Luo Xingchen. The sharp claws waved down towards Luo Xingchen without hesitation. Stepping back, Luo Xingchen turned slightly to the side, then dodged Fern's claws. Boom! The claws hit the ground, and the explosion sounded. At the same time, Luo Xingchen's palm had reached out and directly grabbed the sharp corner of Fern's head. The ice condensed into a sharp blade in the other palm. Aim at Fern's sharp corner and slash down. Boom! The sharp horn was cut off directly, and Fern let out a painful neigh. He seemed to want to take a step back, but Luo Xingchen quickly grabbed Fern's head. At the same time, the knees covered with sharp ice crystals have been raised simultaneously. Extreme Ice Dragons Knee Strike. Chapter 14 Devouring Magic, a new badge. Boom! The dull sound was so clear in the extremely quiet cave space. The shattered fangs flew into the air along with the spray of blood. Facing Luo Xingchen and Fern, he fell to the ground. Hard to get up, shaking his dizzy head. The fierce light in Fern's eyes seemed to be a little more. Grinning his teeth, Fern slammed his fists on the ground. The whole person rushed towards Luo Xingchen again. The chill filled the air. Luo Xingchen's hands were folded together and then slowly opened. The long knife condensed out of thin air was held in his hand. Holding a knife handle, the blade pointed diagonally to the ground. Luo Xingchen took a step and ran. Next moment, one person and one demon interacted in the middle. Luo Xingchen bent down slightly and passed under Fern's wielding claws. The frosty blade slashed directly across Fern's chest. No blood flowed out. Only blood-red ice crystals spread over Fern's body. His feet stomped on the ground, stabilizing his body. Luo Xingchen turned around, holding the ice blade in his hand. He slammed into the sharp claws that were propping up on the ground by Fern. The ice blade directly penetrated Fern's palm, penetrated deeply into the ground. The cold air suddenly erupted, and the extremely cold ice crystals began to spread rapidly from his sharp blade. In just a moment, Fern's palm was firmly dead on the ground. Ho 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 ho! The scar on the abdomen and the pain in the palm of the hand. All this made Fern instinctively let out an almost instinctive roar. The severe pain caused him to wave his other arm even more frantically. I want to completely tear the human beings in front of me to shreds, but a monster that has fallen into madness. How much more reason to think? With just a slight tilt of his head, he avoided the waving claws. Luo Xingchen raised his toes again, straight to Fern's cheek, and kicked away. Boom! The giant force directly caused Fern's entire body to rise into the air, but because the right palm was firmly stuck on the ground. Even the flying Fern's entire body began to rotate around the sharp sword that was plunged into the ground. It's like walking around in a garden. Luo Xingchen took a step and walked to the side. The next second, he stopped, and it seems to be echoing Luo Xingchen. Fern's spinning body stopped right in front of him. There was no hesitation. Luo Xingchen raised his right leg again and kicked Fern's abdomen from the bottom up. The blood-red ice crystals on the abdomen shattered directly. Crimson blood sprayed out, but in an instant it turned into ice crystals and fell to the ground. The giant force acted on Fern's body again. Fern, who had just stopped spinning, took off again, but also because the palm is fixed on the ground. Fern's whole body showed a straight, inverted posture. Then it crashed to the ground. The two watching from a distance stared blankly at Fern, who was beaten like a toy. Is this still the devil in the Book of Zirif? Urza looked at Gildarts, who was beside him. You know, that's Zirif, a demon created by Zirif, the strongest and most vicious black mage in the past 400 years. But now, even Gildart's eyes were rounded. Originally thought that Luo Xingchen would win against the demonized Fern, but it will be extremely difficult. But who knew that this 12 or 13-year-old boy would be so relaxed? You must know that Fern, who has not yet been demonized, already has the strength to match the S-rank mages of ordinary guilds. And the completely demonized Fern. To be honest, he was almost above most of the Sorcerer's Guild. This kid hasn't used his full strength yet. After observing for a while, Gildarts came to this conclusion. What a horrible kid. Shaking his head slightly, even Gildarts had to exclaim. Luo Xingchen slowly came to the end of Fern. The sound of heavy breathing echoed in Luo Xingchen's ears. Even if you can't stand up. But Fern still looked at Luo Xingchen viciously and kept roaring. The fierceness in his eyes seemed to overflow. He narrowed his eyes slightly. Luo Xingchen directly grabbed the other horn on Fern's head. The right foot lifted and stepped directly on Fern's head. The arm jerked violently. Blue veins burst out at this moment. Fern's roar became even more tragic. An indescribable pain passed through his forehead. Stab it! With the sound, the last demon horn on Fern's head was directly ripped off by Luo Xingchen. Ho ho ho! Demon Fern's roar gradually became weaker. He threw the sharp horn in his hand on the ground. Luo Xingchen pulled up the ice sword that bound the demon Fern, Then another kick hit him in the jaw. The sound of bone cracking came out immediately. The demon fern took a few steps backwards, uncontrollably. He slowly let out a cold breath. Luo Xingchen stepped forward and came to the demon fern, slowly raising his arm. A pure white magic circle unfolded in his palm. Under the influence of the magic circle, Fern completely stopped moving. Blood red energy slowly flowed out from the body of the demon fern, gathered in Luo Xingchen's palms. Devour magic, a magic that can forcibly extract the magic power from the mage's body to temporarily strengthen one's own magic power. However, Luo Xingchen originally thought that he could only extract the magic power of the sorcerer. I don't know if it works for the devil, but with the idea of experimentation, Luo Xingchen still tried it. Simply, it works even against demons. The light is constantly gathering. Luo Xingchen activated the magic sublimator in the consciousness space in his mind. Next moment, the magic power gathered in Luo Xingchen's hands began to form a red magic crystal badge. The blood-red liquid on the badge seemed to be surging. At the bottom is written a simple blood. Boil your blood and temporarily strengthen your badge. This reminds Luo Xingchen of the magic of Fern and Ella's short-term improvement in strength just now. He smiled slightly and said, "It seems that I'm lucky today. It's time to deal with you completely." He held the blood demon crystal emblem tightly in his hand. Luo Xingchen took 2 steps back, his mouth bulging. The surrounding temperature seems to have dropped a lot again. Exaggerated magic gathered in his mouth. The very ice dragons roar. Chapter 15, A New Life. A new adventure, it came out of Luo Xingchen's mouth. It's a blue cold snap. The overwhelming cold current is like a wave, overwhelming the demon fern. Not even a scream was made. The entire body of the demon fern is in this extremely low temperature. It completely turned into an ice sculpture that reflected light. A biting chill filled the surroundings. The dragon's breath even changed the surrounding environment. In the originally closed cave space, at this moment, it seems to have turned into a winter snow scene, completely shrouded in pure white ice. This magic, Gildarts tightened the cape around him. Any questions? On the side seemed to be shaking a little under the cold air. Gildarts raised a smile and said slowly, "I wasn't quite sure just now, but this move is absolutely right. This magic can break the scales of the dragon, break the flesh of the dragon, and hunt the soul of the dragon. The ancient magic used to meet the dragon. It's called Dragon Slayer magic." Gildart's eyes were hotter than ever before. This boy is getting more and more interesting. Luo Xingchen spit out the white mist formed by the cold air. He threw the icy sword that he had just drawn from the claws of the demon fern in his hand. Click! The sharp sword plunged directly into the body of the demon fern, who had turned into an ice sculpture. It was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. The cracks started to emerge from where the sword was inserted. Then, like a spider web, it spread toward the entire ice sculpture. Then, Luo Xingchen turned around. The magic power all over his body began to fade away. The ice-blue dragon scales at the corners of his eyes gradually disappeared. Behind him are the white ice crystals that shattered into one place. The surging energy gathered in Luo Xingchen's hands, transformed into a golden extreme Ice Dragon Slayer badge. After picking up the red blood badge he just collected, Luo Xingchen sighed helplessly. Sure enough, golden badges are not so good. But Luo Xingchen just complained. To be frank, how long ago was the last time you saw a badge collected? It seems to have been a year ago. So, I was really lucky to be able to get the badge this time. Shaking his head, he returned the badge to the system space. Luo Xingchen walked towards Gildarts. "Hey kid." Gildarts clapped Luo Xingchen's shoulder with his big hand. An amiable smile appeared on his face. "Would you like to join Fairy Tale?" After the demon fern was completely wiped out, it also heralds the crusade against the Dark Guild and the completion of Deathwing's mission. Then went to the client to settle the task. And the principal, it is also the mayor of the town of Santa Casia. After learning that the actual task difficulty is much higher than expected. The mayor has generously increased the amount of entrusted tasks. After all, such a task is difficult. If I really want to talk about it, it can even be announced as an S-rank mission. Urza, who got the first pot of gold in his life, although excited, but still held back, and he also intends to give Luo Xingchen most of the reward for the task. However, Luo Xingchen has no interest in this. The main thing is that there is no need to pay for what was agreed at the beginning. After all, Luo Xingchen came for the badge. If it's a task you take on yourself, Luo Xingchen will naturally accept it happily. Hearing Luo Xingchen's clear rejection, Urza thought of another way. That is to invite Luo Xingchen to have a good meal. Use this to express your gratitude. In this regard, Luo Xingchen is not rejecting it either. So the two children and an uncle had a good meal in the town of Sanakasia. After the milk is full, it's time to leave. Outside the town of Sanakasia, Gildarts patted Luo Xingchen on the shoulder and continued the question just now. Xingchen, have you considered what I said before? Join the fairy tale one. Luo Xingchen looked directly at Gildarts. The black pupils fluctuated slightly. Urza's eyes also turned to Luo Xingchen at this moment, as if waiting for something. That's right, fairy tale. Gildarts raised his head. There is pride in the tone. Do fairies have tails? Or do fairies really exist? These people don't know, but because of this, it symbolizes eternal adventure. The name has such a meaning. Gildart's voice was unusually loud at this moment. Nearly middle-aged, he has left some vicissitudes of time on his face. But when it comes to this, the eyes are full of expectations for the future or the unknown. Well, it's completely different from the previous group of guys. We are a regular guild. Gildarts set his sights on Luo Xingchen. Didn't you say that you just came to this continent? You have no friends or foothold on this continent. It is better to join our guild. There are many people of your age in the guild. Like Urza. Gildarts pointed to Urza, quietly whispered in Luo Xingchen's ear, there are many more beautiful women of this level in our guild. While talking about Gildarts, he kept raising his eyebrows. Obviously, in order to catch this talented boy, Gildarts is also racking his brains. Luo Xingchen didn't listen to the words behind Gildarts. There was some confusion in the slightly empty eyes. Fairy Tale, a guild that has been carrying out the spirit of harmony since its inception. A guild that has always put its companions first. One has always been looking forward to the future, looking forward to the guild of tomorrow. But just like Luo Xingchen's creed all along, this is not just an anime world, but real, a world of flesh and blood. He didn't know if reality would be so beautiful. I don't know if Fairy Tale will become the home of the person who has been wandering for 2 lifetimes. That's right, in Luo Xingchen's view, he's been wandering for 2 lifetimes. Loneliness seems to have long since become synonymous with him. Therefore, he is unfamiliar with words like family and companions. But when seeing the sincere eyes of Gildarts and Urza, he suddenly felt that he might be able to try it. Try to get out of this loneliness. Try to change a new life. Try an unknown adventure. Maybe not too bad. Seeing that Luo Xingchen still didn't respond, Gildarts was still chattering. Also, after you join the guild, you can still take on tasks. With your strength, you can definitely make money. I agree, Luo Xingchen said softly. The sound was not loud, but clearly reached the ears of the two of them. Gildart's voice came to an abrupt end. Urza breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. I'm sure you can't go back. Gildarts added worriedly. Don't worry, I haven't regretted what I decided. Luo Xingchen waved his hand indifferently. Gildarts laughed and patted Luo Xingchen on the shoulder. BD, don't you know your hands are heavy? Luo Xingchen quickly backed away and rubbed his shoulders. Ha, sorry, I'm a little excited. Gildarts kept laughing, like a conspiracy succeeded. Gives goosebumps all over. Chapter 16, Welcome to Fairy Tale, the Kingdom of Fiori, a town in Magnolia. Whenever this town is mentioned, the first thing that comes to people's mind, it's not that this town is one of the largest towns in the Fiori Kingdom, nor is it the economic leader of the town. It was a guild called Fairy Tale. The so-called guild is a place where mages gather. Mages get paid for fulfilling people's quests. Feed yourself this way. The guild is a place to introduce work. But for some homeless people, the guild is also their habitat. Fairy Tale is an old guild that has been in Magnolia for more than 100 years. There are many powerful wizards born here. There have also been many legends that circulated in the kingdom of Fiori. Of course, the image of most stories is not that positive. Outskirts of Magnolia. 3 figures, 1 big and 2 small, appeared here. Luo Xingchen, who was walking at the forefront, looked at the town in the distance. Due to the high location of Luo Xingchen Station, as a result, almost the entire Magnolia town can be seen. Among them, the most conspicuous, it was the red 3-story building on the edge of the coastline. By the way, Uncle, where's Fairy Tale? Of course, it looks majestic. Gildarts came to Luo Xingchen's side, put his hands on his hips, and said with a smile on his face, "Not bad." Luo Xingchen gave a fair comment. After all, Luo Xingchen had seen many more majestic buildings in his previous life. So, no surprise. Gildarts didn't care about this and patted Luo Xingchen on the shoulder. "Going forward, let's go. It's been a long time since I came out this time. I really miss everyone in the guild." "Do you really have such an idea?" Luo Xingchen looked Gildarts up and down. There was suspicion in his eyes. "If it wasn't for your procrastination, we might have been there long ago." Speaking of which, Luo Xingchen pouted, looking very disdainful. Since the last time Luo Xingchen and others defeated Deathwing, it has been almost half a month. The town of Santa Casia is at most 10 days away from the town of Magnolia, but abruptly went out for 5 more days. Why? That's not because the middle-aged uncle passes by every town. Choose to stay for a while. It is also euphemistically called to experience the customs of various places. The results of it? The moment when Luo Xingchen and Urza caught Gildarts, who was surrounded by girls with red eyes. They finally understood. What is the customs and human feelings in this uncle's mouth? "Hey kid, you can doubt my personality, but you can't doubt my eagerness to miss home." Gildarts was clearly PD off. Urza, who was following behind, helped her forehead helplessly. "It's here again." He sighed. Urza chose to turn a blind eye. The quarrel between the two seems to have become routine these days, but it can be considered to add a lot of fun to the boring journey. The 3 came to the edge of town. Before everyone could enter the town, the harsh siren mixed with the bell sounded immediately, as if to remind people in the city of something. For a time, the people in the town stopped their movements one after another. Looking at the entrance of the town in horror, he shouted, "This way of ringing the bell is Gildarts back." Please note that Magnolia is about to change to Gildarts mode. Please all citizens arrive at the designated location as soon as possible. Please pay attention. The sound of radio birds flying across the sky resounded throughout the town. Immediately afterwards, the town of Magnolia began to shake, accompanied by the sound of gears turning. The whole town is divided into several blocks. The supports buried in the ground hold up countless houses. Plates big and small began to rise. The whole city has been raised a lot. All that remains is the red 3-story building at the end of a straight road. "Ha ha ha, how is it amazing!" Gildarts laughed, a proud look on his face. Because Uncle Gildarts is always in a daze when he walks and destroys other people's houses. So the people of the town remodeled the town. Straightforward, Urza explained. "Huh." Luo Xingchen twitched at the corner of his mouth, looking at the culprit who was still smiling. "I really don't know how proud you are. Isn't that cool?" Gildarts pointed to the only path in front of him. "I don't think people in the town think so," Luo Xingchen complained. "Well, some things still need to be thought about from a different angle." Gildarts waved his hand nonchalantly. "Remodeling the entire town for one person. You can't find a second one in the Fiori kingdom for this kind of thing." Luo Xingchen chose to shut up, and he didn't know how long this guy could keep talking. Several people came to the end of the straight road. When he got closer, Luo Xingchen realized that Fairy Tale's guild was unexpectedly tall. The main body is red, mixed with yellow on top of the building. The large characters Fairy Tale, written on the wooden plaque, immediately caught Luo Xingchen's attention. Looking up again, the flag with the Fairy Tale logo painted on it fluttered in the wind. "This is it," Gildarts whispered from the guild gate. Urza put his hands behind his back. He looked at Luo Xingchen, who was on the side. Xingchen? Luo Xingchen turned his head, looking at Urza, who is smiling. Welcome to Fairy Tale. After being stunned for a while, Luo Xingchen also reacted and smiled slightly. What chapter 17 is this kid so exaggerated? Let's go. I believe Xingchen will like it here. Guild Arts made the first move. Go to the gate of the guild. While walking, he spoke to Luo Xingchen behind him. He didn't even look at the door in front of him. Luo Xingchen stretched out his hand, as if to remind Guild Arts there is a gate ahead. But the words are not over yet. The white halo completely shattered the wooden door and turned it into a pile of sawdust. Luo Xingchen's words stuck in his throat. Has he always been like this? Luo Xingchen quietly asked Urza beside him. Urza nodded earnestly. That's why the city needs to be transformed. Bidigilda. Why can't you just walk through the door? There was an old roar from inside the gate. Haha, sorry, just talking. Gildarts scratched his head. There was no trace of guilt on his smiling face. It's hard work. How did you finish this mission? It must be completed successfully, right? That's for sure. After all, Gildarts is watching. A voice like this came from the door. Luo Xingchen followed Urza and Gildarts into the guild called Fairy Tale. First timing, Luo Xingchen felt the lively atmosphere around him. The noisy sound mixed with the sound of wine glasses colliding incessantly. But miraculously, Luo Xingchen didn't get bored at all. Maybe it's because no one has a hostile relationship. Hey, who is this kid? Someone seemed to notice Luo Xingchen following Gildarts. Could it be the uncle's illegitimate child? Another person laughed and laughed. Should I say it or not? It's quite handsome. Does Gildarts have such genes? Upon hearing this, Gildarts was immediately displeased, aggressively glared at the ridicule. Huh? What do you mean? Are my genes bad? As he spoke, he also fluttered his orange hair. Back then, I was a man who fascinated thousands of girls. However, this kid is really not my illegitimate child. That's right. How could I have something to do with such an uncle? Luo Xingchen immediately retorted. He looked at Gildarts with disgust. Has my image gotten to this point? Gildarts clutched his chest, incredibly murmured. Luo Xingchen and Urza nodded earnestly and in sync. Gildarts felt a pain in his chest all of a sudden, in a corner of the guild where no one is paying attention. Little girl with brown hair and a yellow plaid dress, staring closely at Gildarts in the crowd. He smiled silently, looking a little disappointed. What's the matter, Kana? The black-haired boy with a bare upper body beside him asked suspiciously. Nothing. The little girl, called Kana, shook her head quickly. Glancing at the boy, he sighed helplessly. By the way, Gray, where are your clothes? Hey, when? The little boy named Gray was surprised. Immediately turned around and ran to the side. I guess I went looking for my own clothes. On the other hand, Urza went to hand over the job. Luo Xingchen and Gildarts were ridiculed by everyone in the guild. Came to the bar. Gildarts, who is this kid? An old voice came from above the bar. It was the same person who roared when the door shattered. Luo Xingchen's eyes looked over. It was a small old man sitting at the bar. The top of the old man's head was bare. There is no more hair, but he still had thick white hair on his temples. The old man was holding a cane in his arms, with a glass of frothy beer beside him. Luo Xingchen recognized at the moment he saw it. Makarov, the well-respected president of the Fairy Tale Guild. At the same time, he is also a powerful magician who has been awarded the honor of the Holy Ten. The new guy, Urza, and I met at work, so I brought it back. Gildarts answered. Then he pointed to the old man and said, This is the president of our guild, Mr. Makarov. Rookie. Makarov frowned. He lowered his head slightly and looked at Luo Xingchen. He asked softly, Little boy, what's your name? Although the two worlds are called children, it always feels a little strange. But no way. Who made Luo Xingchen really just a child now? Luo Xingchen, someone from the Eastern Continent. Luo Xingchen replied. East Continent? Are you alone? Makarov was a little surprised. Luo Xingchen nodded lightly. Suddenly, the surprise in Makarov's eyes grew stronger. As someone who has lived for decades, he has naturally heard of the Eastern Continent. But to know the distance between two continents, even larger than the entire continent of Ishgar, A young man of about 12 or 13 years of age has crossed such a huge distance alone. It's hard to believe. Don't judge this young man by his age. Gildarts on the side took the wine glass from the waiter, said with a smile, "He is amazingly strong." The whole place fell silent. Everyone looked at each other. It seems that he never thought that Gildarts, the strongest in the guild, would praise a young man like this. This is something that almost never happens. I heard that right, that Gildart said he was amazing. That kid, is it really that exaggerated? Chapter 18, Give Me a Colorful Black. Luo Xingchen was not affected by the voices of the people in the guild. He stretched out his palm and shook it in front of Makarov. Makarov woke up a little stunned. "By the way, can I join in?" he asked aloud. Since it's someone Gildart's brought back, that's fine." Makarov smiled at Luo Xingchen in front of him. "From today, you are a member of Fairy Tale." The words fell, and Makarov got up from the table. One jumped in front of Luo Xingchen. Luo Xingchen's line of sight just looks up from up to down. Where should it be printed? Makarov took out the guild seal from his bag. He looked up and down Luo Xingchen. Luo Xingchen tugged at his sleeve, revealing the arm of his right arm. On the right shoulder. "Is there a color requirement?" Makarov asked again. "Is there a colorful black?" Luo Xingchen answered seriously. Finally, the sky blue mark appeared on Luo Xingchen's right shoulder. Wing-like stripes extend from the back of the bird-like logo. It's like a holy goblin clinging to the skin. A slight warmth came. I don't know if it's an illusion. At the moment when this coat of arms appeared, Luo Xingchen's wandering soul for a long time actually felt a little at ease. "Wonderful feeling," Luo Xingchen murmured softly. A big hand touched his head abruptly. "Ha, kid." The iconic voice of Gildarts echoed in Luo Xingchen's ears. "From now on, it's a family." Luo Xingchen was stunned for a while, then nodded lightly. "It sounds interesting, uncle." I said, "Don't call me uncle." Gildarts rubbed Luo Xingchen's short black hair in dissatisfaction. "It's you who call the kid first. I'm talking about it. You're already middle-aged, so don't pretend to be tender." Luo Xingchen pouted in disdain. Just when the two of them stared at each other with big eyes, Makarov on the side smiled slightly. "It seems that you have a good relationship, but that's fine." The guild's bond was established in such a commotion. With a smile, Makarov climbed over the bar again. He picked up the beer on the bar and held it up. The old voice revealed a different kind of high. "Little devils, let's have a banquet to welcome the newcomer Luo Xingchen." At the moment when the old man's voice fell, everyone in the guild burst into cheers. Oh, welcome to Fairy Tale." Is Luo Xingchen Kana's eyes were fixed on Luo Xingchen, who was surrounded by everyone for the first time. "He's great, isn't he?" Then he looked at Urza, who was eating strawberry cake beside him, and asked, "A star?" Urza put a scoop of cake into his mouth. Biting his fork, he watched Kana keep nodding. It seems to recall some time ago in my mind. The scene where Luo Xingchen beat up the demon Fern by himself. Nodding seriously, "The stars are very strong, better than Urza?" Kana asked again. "You know, so far, among the younger generations of Fairy Tale in Kana's eyes, only Urza and a boy named Laxus are the strongest, even stronger than most adults." Hearing Kana's words, Urza waved his hands. "I'm still a long way off. The strength of Xingchen is astonishing, even Uncle Gildart's." "Is that so?" Kana nodded slightly. The hands hidden under the table clenched slightly. Looking at Gildart's eyes, I don't know what to think. When it comes to being powerful, how can it be without me, Lord Grey? While the two girls were chatting, Grey jumped out suddenly. "By the way, aren't you looking for clothes?" Kana said while looking at Grey, who was still naked. Grey waved his hand helplessly. "I can't find it, but it's not important." His eyes looked at a few people, and his eyes flashed with excitement. "You were just saying that the new guy is very strong, right? What do you want?" Urza looked at Grey suspiciously. "What?" Grey's eyes turned to Luo Xingchen's direction. The corner of his mouth raised an excited smile. "Of course I swear my status as Lord Grey. When did you guy become so amazing?" Kana sighed helplessly. "Do you want to fight?" Urza frowned. Serious expression. Grey broke into a cold sweat. "I couldn't help but think of the days when I was beaten up by Urza. This is not a simple fight. It's just a discussion. For a moment." Gray responded quiveringly. Seeing this, Urza's frowning brows loosened. He turned his attention to the cake in front of him. The right hand continued to dig the cake with a spoon. It's not a bad thing if you just compare it. But the stars are very strong. You will definitely not be an opponent. As he spoke, he put the cake into his mouth. She turned her head and wanted to continue persuading Gray, but she was instantly stunned. "Where's Gray?" she asked, pointing to the empty seat beside her. Kana spreads her hands. "When you said the first sentence just now, that guy Gray went to look for the stars." "Huh?" Urza's eyes widened, turned, and saw the shirtless Gray. Taking 8-character steps, he walked aggressively in the direction of Luo Xingchen. "A few months ago, when I came to the guild for the first time, Gray's like that too. But then, naturally, she was severely beaten. Then this time, I met a Luo Xingchen who was much stronger than me." Helplessly shook his head. What a guy who doesn't have a long memory. Chapter 19, Ice, Frozen Ice. The other side. As the protagonist of this banquet, Luo Xingchen was surrounded by a group of people at the moment. "It's okay to call you Xingchen. You are welcome to join us." "Ha. Our guild is a lot more lively now. Besides, the little brother is still very handsome. When he grows up, he will definitely be able to fascinate a large number of fans." Luo Xingchen was full of sweat at the moment. After all, he had never dealt with such a situation, so much so that he seemed a little helpless at the moment. However, he also knew that everyone was kind, so there is no refusal either. And in this short time, Luo Xingchen also got acquainted with the members of Fairy Tail in general. For example, the man in front of him with purple hair is called Macau. The man on the nose of the plane beside him was named Waka. A man who was clamoring for a portrait of himself was named Ladesu. There's also a man named Vegeta who is going to dance on the spot, etc., etc. These characters were once only seen in anime. Really appear in front of you. This made Luo Xingchen sigh at the wonder of the world. "Hey, I heard that you are very powerful. Come and fight with me." The noisy crowd suddenly quieted down. Pairs of eyes stared at the boy in front of him who was a little shorter than Luo Xingchen. Luo Xingchen's attention was also attracted by the boy. He looked at the confident figure with his arms on his hips, bare upper body. Luo Xingchen doesn't even have to think about who this guy is. "Gray, are you sure? I heard that the stars are very strong." Wakaba exhaled a smoke ring, said slowly, "Don't worry, I have absolute confidence in myself." Gray said loudly, patting his chest. "Things are starting to get interesting." Macau leaned against the bar, with an interested smile on his face. Gray's strength is not weak. Gildarts on the side took a swig of beer, put the glass on the table, and said, "It's impossible for Gray to beat the stars. Is that kid really that strong?" Macau was in disbelief. After all, they're both the same age. No matter how strong you are, there's always a limit, right? In any case, Gray will have a chance to win. Gildart smiled, looked at Luo Xingchen, and murmured, "Maybe even the current you can't beat him." He knew that Luo Xingchen possessed extremely cold dragon-slaying magic. Dragon Slayer magic. It is definitely not possible to win with magic of the same attribute. And it just so happens that the magic that Gray uses is called ice-shape magic. That is to say, Gray's eyes can't do any damage to Luo Xingchen at all. It may even be the power that strengthens Luo Xingchen's own magic. Moreover, they have been together for nearly half a month on the road. Gildarts knew that Luo Xingchen had nothing but Jibing's dragon-slaying magic. There are many other magics, although it is not as powerful as Dragon Slayer magic, but against the current Gray. Totally enough. Let's see. Gildart smiled. No explanation met. Luo Xingchen stared at Gray before shaking his head after a while. Forget it. Having said that, he turned his head. After all, he beat up his guild companions on his first day. Even Luo Xingchen would be a little embarrassed. And even considering that the magic sublimator can collect the magic power left over after the Battle of the Magician, Luo Xingchen was too lazy to do it. After all, the current Gray is really too weak, and there's really too little magic power left behind. It wasn't even as fast as Luo Xingchen's natural collection of the magic in the air. Also, Gray's magic is ice. Even if it is made into a magic crystal, It is just an ordinary red ice badge. Where's the incense of the extremely ice dragon slayer badge? The surrounding members looked at Gray, who failed to provoke, and let out unscrupulous laughter. Haha, Gray can't just be confident, Macau said with a big laugh. That's right, no one wants to fight you. Wakaba raised his glass. Had a clink with Macau. Less long-winded. Gray blushed, unwilling to look directly at Luo Xingchen. Anyway, let's fight. Saying that, Gray waved his fist. A little bit of cold air permeated around the fist. Gray rushed towards Luo Xingchen regardless. Gray's action instantly excited the people around him. Oh, Gray's on. Although I really want to support Gray, my reason tells me that he should not be able to win. But it's just a good time to see how strong the boy even Gildarts praised, isn't it? Haha, that's what I said, come on Gray. One after another roar resounded around. Cheering from a few people gave Gray a lot of confidence, so that the pace of the charge was a little lighter. Looking at Luo Xingchen still sitting in front of the table without any movement, Gray smiled slightly. You underestimate the enemy. The one who wins must be me. His fists touched together, and a faint ice blue light shone in his hands. Feel the movement behind you. Luo Xingchen turned around helplessly. Looking at the oncoming Gray, he sighed, and Gray also rushed in front of Luo Xingchen in this short time. The palm filled with chills aimed at Luo Xingchen. Ice make ice. Brush. A sudden cold snap. The words that made Gray's mouth come to an abrupt end. In the horrified eyes of everyone, Luo Xingchen put down his raised arm, and at this moment Gray, the sorcerer who surpassed many in the guild at such a young age, the sorcerer who uses ice-shaped magic, at this moment, it was actually frozen. Chapter 20 Welcome Ceremony. The scene seemed to fall into an eerie silence. Almost no one dared to believe the scene in front of him. Gray was actually frozen by ice? It has been 2 years since Gray came to the guild. Therefore, everyone in the guild knows the strength of this little guy who loves to undress. There is no doubt that Gray's strength is not weak. And, as an ice wizard, he has a great resistance to ice. A ruthless man who has no problem with being naked even in the icy and snowy extreme north. Today was actually sanctioned by Bing. Okay, it's amazing. Kana covered her mouth, her eyes full of surprise. Xingchen's strength is very strong. But because of this, we have to catch up. Urza folded his arms, his eyes full of fighting spirit. I kind of believe what you're saying now. At the bar, Macau looked at Gildarts and shook his head. There was helplessness written on his face. Are the little devils so scary now? Said Wakaba, who was smoking a pipe. After all, it's the children who will take care of Fairy Tale's future. Gildarts is holding the glass and smiling. Just then, Makarov came over and said, This time, Gildarts, you have done a great job. I actually brought back such a good seedling. Gildarts looked at Makarov and raised his eyebrows. Of course, it took me a lot of effort to pull this young man over. Isn't there any reward? Hearing this, Makarov's eyes widened. You kid, are you sure you want to count so clearly? Saying that, he also pointed to the gate, due to the destruction of the wooden door by Gildarts. At this moment, the door is still constantly blowing wind towards it. Suddenly, Gildarts waved his hands again and again. Just kidding, just kidding. The welcome banquet continued into the evening. Most of the guild members were very drunk, so he simply fell to the ground on the spot, into a deep sleep. Only a small percentage of people who drink well stay sober. Of course, all this except a bunch of underage kids. Luo Xingchen came to Gray and the others with a glass of milk. Unlike the taverns in the town of Sanacacia, Fairy Tale probably took into account the fact that there are many children in the guild. Therefore, there is still milk in the bar. This is cheap Luo Xingchen. For a milk obsessed him. This is probably what attracted him the most to Fairy Tale. Came to Gray's side. At this moment, Gray, who has always liked to be naked, put on thick clothes for the first time. The whole person seems to be wrapped into a ball, hiding in the corner shivering. Xingchen, you're here. Kana, the little girl, saw Luo Xingchen, who was approaching first. Greeted aloud. Gray, who also saw Luo Xingchen's arrival. Immediately, he buried his head. No way. Shame on you. Aggressively looking for people to fight In the end, he was beaten by others in the way he was best at. Is he okay? Luo Xingchen looked at Gray. Kana spread her hands. Gray has always been like this since you lifted the freeze. Upon seeing this, Luo Xingchen patted Gray's shoulder. Sorry, mainly because I haven't been merciful, so the control is not very good. Hearing this, Gray felt even colder inside. Apparently, they were all about the same age. Maybe Luo Xingchen is a year or two older than him. But why is the difference in strength so big? Are people really that different? Les, don't talk too much. This time you're lucky. I will definitely win next time. Maybe because of the cold. At this moment, Gray was even speaking intermittently. Luo Xingchen smiled helplessly. It seems that you are very persistent. When of course, Gray replied. Then, as if thinking of something, he quickly asked, also, your ice shouldn't be ordinary ice, right? Even in Ulu, I have never felt such cold ice. Luo Xingchen smiled and replied, the ice of the extreme ice dragon is naturally different from other ices. Extreme ice dragon? The current Gray is obviously not very clear. What does this represent? I know. Khan on the side raised her hand excitedly. It's dragon slaying magic. Seeing Luo Xingchen's gaze, he looked over. Kana said the name confidently. The magic used in the legend to fight the dragon, but it is too old because of the age. Therefore, magic that is almost extinct. Luo Xingchen was stunned, then shook his head. It seems that Kana knows a lot. A compliment to Luo Xingchen. Kana scratched her head embarrassedly. Actually, it's mainly because I've been learning magic recently, so I've learned about almost all magic. By the way, where's Urza? Luo Xingchen looked around. The crimson figure was not found. Involuntarily asked aloud. After all, in fairy tale, to say the most familiar, I am afraid that only Urza and guild arts. In Urza's case, this time should be training on the beach behind the guild. Gray stuck a head out of his padded jacket and said, training? It seems late now. Luo Xingchen glanced at the outside world, which had been shrouded in darkness, and was a little puzzled. Urza is always like this. Every evening when he leaves the guild, he will have a special training for a period of time. Kana said while holding a drink. Basically every day, I go back very late. Hearing this, Luo Xingchen nodded. Thoughtful. Chapter 21 The Battle Under the Night Sky opened the back door of the guild. It is the land that extends to the beach, looking forward. It is the endless sea. The surging waves were sparkling in the moonlight. Luo Xingchen closed the back door. His eyes looked towards the sea, standing on the beach at the moment. A girl who was constantly swinging her sword. Drink! Drink! Urza slashed the blade hard, then lifted it up again. Slash again. It's such a simple up and down slashing action. But Urza didn't seem to have the slightest bit of boredom. Keep repeating this action. Sweat dripping from his forehead ran across his white cheeks and dripped onto the sand. Urza didn't even care, looking straight at the sea. That persistent will, it was as if he had to split the sea in front of him before he was willing to give up. Taking a gentle step, Luo Xingchen came to the edge of the beach. He hugged his arms and leaned against the railing outside the guild, watching Urza's movements quietly. There was no sound. After a while, Urza seemed to want to rest for a while. Stopped the movement in his hand. He raised his right hand and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Turning around, he saw Luo Xingchen behind him. Xingchen. Her tone was a little surprised. When did you come? He shook his arm, which was numb from constantly swinging the sword. Urza walked towards Luo Xingchen. It's been a while. Luo Xingchen replied. I'm sorry, I'm too involved. Urza came to Luo Xingchen. Apologized softly. By the way, what are you doing here? She looked at Luo Xingchen and asked. Listen to Kana and the others. You train here every day, and I'm just bored. So come and see. So it is. Urza nodded seriously and said, I have a set training time every day. You really work hard. Luo Xingchen shook his head. He walked to the beach and sat down on the spot. If you want to become stronger, these are all necessary, aren't they? Urza also came to Luo Xingchen and sat on the beach. I see it, but sometimes being too persistent can make things worse. Luo Xingchen looked at the sea in front of him and spoke softly. Hearing Luo Xingchen's words, Urza turned his head slightly. Staring at his side face, he didn't quite understand what he meant. Sometimes, you need to combine work and rest. You are too serious during the day and too hard at night. People who are in a state of nervousness for a long time will collapse. Turning his head, Luo Xingchen and Urza looked at each other. "It's time to relax once in a while," said softly. Suddenly, he looked at Luo Xingchen, looking at the eyes that seemed to be filled with stars and seas. Urza obviously had not experienced such a scene, so that his cheeks were a little red. He hurriedly lowered his head, and after a moment of silence, he said, "Is this the secret of your power? If it is, I'll give it a try." Even though he said so, his tone was still so serious. Luo Xingchen sighed helplessly. Obviously, Urza didn't even listen. Luo Xingchen understands why Urza desperately wants to become stronger. Also understand Urza's idea. But as he said, being too persistent can backfire. However, this is also Urza's character. It's not something that can be changed overnight. In Luo Xingchen's view, Mira Jane in the original does this very well. Pulled Urza back from that state of tension. After all, Mira Jane had trouble with Urza every now and then. Even if you want to be serious, you can't be serious. And it is precisely because of the existence of Mira Jane. Urza just learned to bicker like a normal person. Roll like a normal person. Fight like a normal person. Shaking his head, Luo Xingchen had nothing to do. Let go. The stars. Suddenly, Urza stood up. His eyes were fixed on Luo Xingchen. "Let's have a fight." Huh? Luo Xingchen was stunned. "I want to see the real gap between us. So please." Urza said, "I just came to see the scenery. No need." Luo Xingchen scratched his head. He originally wanted to refuse. Looking at Urza, who had already drawn out his blade and was ready to fight, he sighed helplessly. "Come on then." Urza, who got Luo Xingchen's approval, had a smile on his face. Clutching the blade, Urza stepped forward. The magic within the body is injected into the blade. With the momentum of breaking the bamboo, Urza swung the blade sharply. The attack is too straight, and the enemy can see your next move at a glance. Luo Xingchen commented. He leaned slightly to one side, dodging against Urza's blade. Luo Xingchen's sudden action caught Urza by surprise. The blade slashed directly into the ground. However, it is always a move that Urza has practiced for a long time. A single blow knocked the ground out of a pothole. Dust rose up. Urza didn't pass up the chance to attack again. Immediately, he raised his sword and slashed from the bottom to the top. Everything has been said. The next step has been seen through. Luo Xingchen bent heavily towards the back. Once again dodged Urza's sword. Also, although the upper body's explosion is sufficient, the lower plate lacks stability. Luo Xingchen's voice fell, and he put one hand on the ground to stabilize his body. The free right foot swept towards Urza's standing legs. Boom! Urza, caught off guard, flew straight into the air. On the ground, Luo Xingchen stood up. The clenched fist was covered with pure, white ice crystals. Then came out with a bang. Urza, who was in the air, immediately raised the blade. The next moment, the fist collided with the blade. The huge force directly knocked Urza out. Chapter 22, Starry Sky and Tranquility Under the Stars. The two figures are constantly intertwined. In the surging cold air, the sharp sword light was constantly flashing, although fully suppressed. But Urza kept trying to get away from Luo Xingchen's dodging moves. Look for that fleeting opportunity. Another blow. It was followed by the fist that kept expanding in the pupil. Urza's pupil shrank sharply. Luo Xingchen's dodging gestures flashed through his mind just now. Sometime, Urza found a way to escape. The body also moved for the first time. The next moment, in Luo Xingchen's surprised eyes, Urza dodged his punch at an angle that would be hard for ordinary people to do, and she also caught the brief freeze of the blow. He swung the sword in his hand. Boom! This is the sound of ice crystals shattering. But it also proved that Urza has been in this game for half an hour. For the first time, I hit Luo Xingchen. Nice job, Urza! One hand remained in a punching position. The other hand, covered in ice crystals, grabbed Urza's blade. Luo Xingchen exclaimed in admiration. After letting go of the blade, Luo Xingchen took a few steps back with a smile on the corner of his mouth. Hoof. Urza, exhausted, gasped heavily. His crimson hair was a little messy, and his cheeks were covered in sweat. The whole body was half kneeling on the ground. Looking at Luo Xingchen in front of her, she shook her head bitterly. Despite the battle, neither used powerful magic, has been fighting with physical skills. But Urza knew that Luo Xingchen still put too much water. Like the sword just now. Although it was hit, it was clear that Luo Xingchen had reacted, and it was successfully defended. Strictly speaking, this is not a successful attack, but it's also a big improvement for Urza. You know, the previous full half an hour, Urza never even touched Luo Xingchen's shirt. You really exaggerate. Urza shook his head. Having no strength to stand up, she simply sat on the ground. With his hands behind his back, he said these words convincingly. Luo Xingchen smiled slightly. You are also very strong, whether it is in terms of will, comprehension, and magic. This is not a compliment. Luo Xingchen really thinks Urza is very strong. Why is it a little immature now? It was only because Urza's magic was only awakened not long ago. Just give her more time. Urza's growth rate is sure to blow everyone's jaws. As she just fought, from being passively beaten all the time to successfully counterattacking. Among them, Urza's amazing fighting talent is reflected. Have the talent to surpass others, and have the perseverance to surpass others. Such people are not strong. Then who else can be called powerful? By the way, you obviously look about the same age as me, but why is your combat experience so rich? Urza looked at Luo Xingchen in front of him and asked his own question. Luo Xingchen turned around. With his back to Urza, his eyes are on the night sky. There is no shortcut to this. When you have experienced enough battles, your experience will also be enriched. You know, when traveling to the Eastern continent, in order to raise the magic crystal badge, Luo Xingchen had to fight every 3 days on average. In such a high-intensity battle, naturally, he has cultivated a fighting instinct that surpasses ordinary people. Speaking of this, Luo Xingchen seemed to have thought of something. He stretched out his palm, and his consciousness stimulated the magic sublimator in his mind. After all, the magic left in the air after the battle, just now, cannot be wasted. It might even condense a magic crystal badge belonging to Urza. But ideal is full. The reality is very skinny. Looking at the magic light spots around him gathering in his hands, in the end, it converged into a green or green magic crystal badge. That is to say, even the lowest green badge cannot be reached. No use at all. In this regard, Luo Xingchen was not too disappointed. After all, where is the explosion rate of the Pit Father? And for now, Urza's magic is too weak. There was not much magic left in the surroundings. Not even the development of magic is complete. Therefore, Luo Xingchen did not hold out much hope. Perhaps the success rate will be much higher after Urza is strong in the later stage. At this moment, Urza in the back is still immersed in what Luo Xingchen just said. Fighting, she whispered. He stared at Luo Xingchen, who was facing away from him. It seems that I feel a little tired standing all the time. Luo Xingchen sat down on the spot, then fell backwards. Put your hands behind your head. With such a posture, as soon as you open your eyes, you can see the stars in the sky. Different from the hustle and bustle of the day. More quiet at night. Although the sound of the sea came from my ears. Is the starry sky beautiful? Luo Xingchen asked. Urza was puzzled, but still look up. The countless stars hanging in the sky exude their brilliance. This lights up the darkness of the night sky, like a pair of invisible hands. Soothe people's restless hearts. Beautiful, Urza murmured softly. Chapter 23 Mission Start. You said, how many stars are there in the sky? Urza asked. There are more than you know about numbers. Luo Xingchen replied. So much. Are they all contained in a night sky? Urza seemed a little surprised. Yeah, it is because of its endless inclusiveness that it can present such a beautiful scene. Luo Xingchen looked at the sky and said softly, Is that so? I never noticed it. Urza's eyes dimmed. How can a person who is in hell dare to look up to the stars in the sky? But you noticed now, didn't you? Seemingly aware of Urza's emotions, Luo Xingchen spoke slowly. No matter what it was, at least you're sitting here now. Your eyes are looking up at the stars. That's enough. Luo Xingchen slowly closed his eyes. It seems to be enjoying the tranquility of this moment. But there was a voice from the slightly moving lips. Having been carrying the heavy burden on your body will bend your back. Occasionally unloading it is also in order to better shoulder a heavier burden and move forward. So, stop talking, be quiet, relax, and enjoy all this. Luo Xingchen's last sentence was very soft. It's so light that it's almost inaudible. Urza opened his mouth. In the end, he swallowed the words that came to his mouth. Sitting, she lowered her head slightly, looked at the boy with closed eyes lying on the beach. The even breathing made it impossible for her to tell if the boy was fast asleep. After staring for a while, she turned slightly, turning her back to the boy. Just like his actions, he slowly lay on the beach toward the back. The head should be within the 90-degree angle between Luo Xingchen's shoulder and head. A hand rests behind his head. Place one hand on the abdomen. When you open your eyes, you are the stars, and when you turn your head, you are still the stars. She seemed to have thought of something interesting. The corner of his mouth raised a slight smile. I slowly closed my eyes. The smell of the sea came from the wind and caressed the faces of the boy and girl. It's like a delicate and peaceful artistic picture. Suddenly appeared at the back door of the guild, on the drawing board of fairy tale artist Li Desu. Li Desu's face was full of smiles. The brush in his hand stopped after finishing the last stroke. After carefully putting away all the painting tools, Li Desu stood up softly and walked towards the interior of the guild, as if afraid of disturbing the two sleeping on the beach. Time flies by inadvertently. It has been nearly 3 months since Luo Xingchen came to Fairy Tale. In this period, Luo Xingchen is almost completely familiar with all the people in Fairy Tale. Also familiar with the life of Fairy Tale. At Makarov's recommendation, Luo Xingchen is temporarily staying in Fairy Tale male dormitory. Of course, you need to pay the rent of 100,000 J per month. Not expensive for a wizard. Originally, Makarov was thinking that Luo Xingchen had just come to the guild. Probably no money. I planned to pay the money for Luo Xingchen myself first, but it was rejected by Luo Xingchen. During his 2-year travels in the Eastern continent, Luo Xingchen can be considered to have wiped out many dark guilds. So, whether it's rewards or loot, etc., all these make Luo Xingchen rich. Naturally, without Makarov's help. After solving the problem of housing and transportation, Luo Xingchen should also consider his first mission. After all, you can't sit and eat mountains, can you? Early in the morning, Luo Xingchen came to the Fairy Tale Guild. As soon as you enter the door, it is as noisy as in the past. The members either held their glasses and drank or huddled together, chat and fart. Of course, most of the chat is bragging. There were people saying hello along the way. Luo Xingchen also responded politely. But it didn't stop. Go straight to the guild's task request column. The guild's quest column is the way for mages to earn rewards. Commission people through paper. Write your mission requirements and mission rewards on it. Then cast in the major guilds. A commission is not only one guild can accept. Therefore, although the major guilds belong to the Light Alliance, but it still maintains a competitive relationship. After the guild receives the commission, it will paste it on the task commission bar. For the wizards to choose at will. Luo Xingchen, who came to the task entrustment block, held his chin with one hand. Lost in thought, his eyes swept across the orders one by one. However, it is worth mentioning that there are 2 quest blocks in the Fairy Tale Guild. One is a routine task, placed on the first floor. Such tasks are varied, from helping grandma take care of cats and dogs to crusade against large dark guilds. Basically Then there is the second quest column placed in the restricted area on the 2nd floor of Fairy Tale. Tasks pasted on this are extremely rare. Every mission is full of unpredictable dangers, and they all have a unified name, S-level mission. Although dangerous, but the reward for the task is also very rich. It can be said that it has completely surpassed ordinary tasks. But if you want to take on this kind of task, only S-rank mages recognized by Makarov can receive it. Is Xingchen going to do a mission? Just when Luo Xingchen was confused, Urza's voice came from behind. Spending a lot of money recently. I have to earn some money to support myself. Luo Xingchen responded. That, or let's go together in a team. It just so happens that I also want to take on a mission recently. Looking at Luo Xingchen in front of him, Urza made such a request. Luo Xingchen looked at Urza suspiciously. He knows about teaming up. After all, mages are only one person no matter how strong they are. When performing some more troublesome tasks, inevitably there will be overwhelmed situations. At this time, the role of the team comes into play. With the help of companions, the process of the task will become much smoother. Can't you? Seeing that Luo Xingchen hadn't made a statement yet, Urza seemed a little disappointed. Oh, that's not it. Just a little surprised that you, who have been alone all the time, will find someone to form a team. As for team formation, I have no opinion. Luo Xingchen replied. Seeing this, Urza was inexplicably relieved and then asked, Then are you sure what mission to choose? A decision has been made. Saying that, Luo Xingchen stretched out his hand and tore off an order from the task panel. Chapter 24, Please Respect Yourself, Gray. President. Luo Xingchen and Urza came to the bar together. Give the quest order in hand to Makarov above the bar. Said, I'm going to take on this mission. Oh, holding a cane on the bar. The slightly drunk Makarov opened his eyes, looking at the task order handed by Luo Xingchen. A capital A is printed on the top by a red seal, frowning slightly. He moved his gaze to Luo Xingchen. Are you really sure? Although Gildart said that your strength is very strong, but the first time is an A-level task, I am afraid it is a bit reluctant. There was concern in Makarov's tone. To know, in the wizard's world, the level of quests is roughly based on difficulty. It can be divided into D, C, B, A, S grades. As for the above, it is not the level that a few people can currently access. Therefore, A-level tasks can be said to be close to S-level tasks. And so-called task ratings are only rough estimates. If the situation is true, there is even a possibility that the actual situation is higher than the estimate. Like the first mission Urza took last time. Obviously, it's just a marked B-level task, but the actual difficulty is comparable to the average S rank. Don't worry, President, the strength of Xingchen. I guess even S rank is no problem. Gildarts on the side spoke indifferently with a glass of wine. After all, he is probably the only one who has truly seen Luo Xingchen's strength. So he has confidence. But, Makarov left Gildarts angrily. Since you guarantee this, why don't you follow along? Cough, cough. The wine Gildarts had just drank and instantly spewed out, and he coughed twice. Forgive me, I just came back not long ago. Didn't I bring new people some time ago? Gildarts looked bitter. Seeing this, Makarov pouted in disdain. Then he looked at the two children in front of him. Anyway, you two are sure, right? Luo Xingchen and Urza nodded together. Makarov stroked his beard. After pondering for a moment, he said, Since even Gildarts believes in you, I agree. But having said this, he paused and stood up, jumped from the bar to the bar. He reached out and found a spherical magic crystal inside the counter and handed it to Luo Xingchen. In a very serious tone, you can take this communication magic crystal first. If there is any emergency, you can contact me at any time, understand? Okay. Luo Xingchen didn't refuse. After all, it does feel good to have someone who cares about you. Receive the communication magic crystal from Makarov's hands. Luo Xingchen greeted Urza and left the guild together. Be careful on the road, Makarov exclaimed, looking at the backs of the two children. I see. Luo Xingchen waved his back to him. You said, President, will there be any sparks in their mission this time? Gildarts leaned against the post, beer in one hand, holding his chest in one hand. His eyes are a little playful. Spark. Makarov brushed off Gildarts. Then he pulled out a picture under the starry sky from behind. Isn't this already wiped out? I see. Now it's time to think about how to turn the spark into a raging fire. In a lively guild, two pairs of eyes twinkled strangely. There was a low burst of laughter. Magnolia Southgate Park, because it is the location closest to the exit of the town. Therefore, Luo Xingchen chose the meeting point here. After all, The place to go is far away. Both Urza and himself need to go back to the dormitory to pack up before leaving. And Luo Xingchen also quietly went to borrow something, because there are not many things. Luo Xingchen prepared a backpack with 2 sets of change clothes. They came to Southgate Park first and waited for Urza. But fortunately, Urza does things resolutely. No need for makeup or anything. Therefore, Luo Xingchen didn't wait long to hear Urza's cry. Only, by the way, did you move your house? Luo Xingchen pointed to a cart of luggage that was pulling behind Urza. Yes, that's right. It's a carload of luggage. We're just going to complete a mission, and we're not on vacation. We shouldn't use so many things, right? Luo Xingchen complained. Because of the lessons learned from the last mission, I think it's better to bring suitcases. Urza is very serious. Luo Xingchen. Also, what happened to these two? Luo Xingchen looked through the tall luggage. He looked at Kana and Gray behind him. Xingchen, hello. Kana greeted cautiously. I think you need my help, Xingchen. Gray was a little underwhelmed. Urza looked at the two and then explained, they've been clamoring to come. I don't think it matters, so I let them come. Can't you? If not, I'll drive them away, she asked. Gray panicked when he heard that he was about to be driven away. He quickly came to Luo Xingchen's side and hugged Luo Xingchen's thigh. Xingchen, don't look at the fact that I was defeated by you last time, but I am also very strong. Take me with you. Seeing Gray's coquetry, Luo Xingchen felt a chill. But Kana was very reasonable at the time, but only a little frustrated. If you think we're in the way, then we'll go back. Looking at these two, what else can Luo Xingchen say? Helplessly sighed. Since you have come, let's go together. And also, Luo Xingchen looked at Gray, who was holding his thigh. Respect yourself, Gray. Chapter 25. The Furious Makarov. Let's go quickly, or we won't catch the train. After obtaining the consent of Luo Xingchen, Gray seemed unusually excited. After all, it has been more than 2 years since I came to the guild. In Gray's view, his strength has already met the requirements of the task. But Makarov never allowed Gray to do the task. But fortunately, under today's soft and hard bubbles, Makarov agreed with Gray. But the condition is that Luo Xingchen must agree to bring them. Really, you can't be so frizzy during the mission, you know? Urza gave Gray a stern warning. Yes, Gray nodded earnestly. Urza then looked at Luo Xingchen. Then let's go. Wait a minute, we don't need a train. Facing Urza, Luo Xingchen shook his head slightly. Could it be to walk over? Urza's eyes widened. If I remember correctly, the location of the mission is on the coastal border of Fiori Kingdom, which is very far away. Urza seems to want to remind Luo Xingchen. Don't worry, I'm ready. Luo Xingchen smiled. Follow me. With that, he turned around and walked out of the park. Seeing this, Urza still dragged his luggage and followed, although he was puzzled. Not really going to walk, are you? Gray scratched his head. He looked at Kana next to him. Kana left Gray speechless. How was it possible? Go up and have a look. Oh, with that said, the two trotted to catch up with Luo Xingchen, who was in front, and came to the outside of the park. Hey, Xingchen, isn't that what you said about the preparation? Kana froze for a moment, pointing to the four-wheeler ahead. Magic four-wheeler? How did you get this kind of thing? Gray's eyes widened, and he glanced at the magic quadricycle for a while. After a while, he looked at Luo Xingchen, who was holding his arms around him, a little unbelievable in his eyes. You know, the magic four-wheeled vehicle is a high-level magic device. Each one costs a lot. Therefore, it cannot be afforded by a group of children. Even most adult wizards don't necessarily have a car of their own. This is not mine, it is the president's, and I borrowed it. Luo Xingchen explained with a smile. Is the president even able to lend you this kind of thing? The suspicion in Gray's eyes grew stronger. Just that stingy old man. Would you lend such a precious thing to a group of bear children? At the same time, inside the Fairy Tale Guild, Fairy Tale this time of day as it's approaching night. They're all closed and are not accepting any commissions. Therefore, as president, Makarov also gets plenty of time for the nightlife. Just as Makarov happily walked towards the Fairy Tale backyard. I plan to drive the magic four-wheeler I just bought with huge sums of money when going out for a ride, but instantly froze in place. The sudden wind blows a little dust swipe across the clearing in front of Makarov's eyes. The magic quadricycle that was supposed to be parked in front of me. It has disappeared by now. Huh, where's my car? Makarov rubbed his eyes, after opening his eyes and looking at it. Where's my big car? Makarov panicked and looked around quickly. But it's a pity, not at all. It's that BD. How dare you steal a car under the eyes of this old man? You're impatient to live, aren't you? Makarov blew his beard and stared. The figure that was originally hunched jumped up in anger at this moment. No, the key is still with me. Why did you steal it without the key? A terrible thought popped into my mind. Makarov immediately touched his pocket. Sure enough, even the key was stolen. No, a note appeared in the bag at some point. Makarov hurriedly opened it to take a look. President, the journey is long this time, so borrow your car. Luo Xingchen stay. Only then did Makarov notice. During the day, Luo Xingchen really had contact with him for a long time. At that time, I thought he was here to care about this old man. Result, this little BD. Makarov threw the note on the ground. Roar loudly. Wow, I'm so PD off. This day inside Fairy Tale, everyone heard the roar from the backyard resounding through the sky. Southgate Park. Why do you care about this? Just get in the car. Luo Xingchen waved his hand and took the lead in the driving seat. Hey, I don't know why, but I suddenly have an ominous premonition. Gray murmured. Urza on the side didn't seem to hear Gray's words. Looking up and down the magic four-wheeler, he seemed to be looking for a place to drop his luggage. In the end, it was decided to tie all the luggage to the roof. Fortunately, Urza is still young. Although there are many things that can be brought, there is also a limit. It can still be installed on the bottom of the car. Urza was then seated in the co-pilot. Immediately after, Kana and Gray also got on the magic quadricycle with great interest. Out of curiosity, the two looked to the left from time to time. Move right, fasten your seatbelt, and get ready to go. Luo Xingchen put the powered SE plug on his hand. Unlike Luo Xingchen's previous life, he used energy, such as gasoline, as power. The magic quads in this world also use magic power. In this SE plug, it is a device that converts the driver's magic into fuel. Wait, Xingchen should not be an adult. Can you drive? Gray raises a crucial question. Chapter 26 Drag Racing. Don't worry, my skills are very good, and there are no regulations in this regard. Luo Xingchen looked back at Gray and smiled. Besides, the roads we take are all mountain roads or plains. No towns. Turning his head, Luo Xingchen looked straight ahead. When it comes to driving, what Luo Xingchen said is really true, although I have never experienced it in my previous life. But in the 2 years in the Eastern continent, he stole a magic four-wheeler from a dark guild. After a good practice, I even fell in love with this feeling. Moreover, because he has Dragon Slayer magic. Luo Xingchen has also done a test, that is, when he integrates the Dragon Slayer badge. It does get motion sickness, however, when the power is not applied. Driving or something is a small problem. When his thoughts returned, Luo Xingchen continued to soothe Gray behind him, saying, so you don't have to worry about bumping into people or anything. Gray grabbed Luo Xingchen's chair with both hands and said, I'm not worried about this, mainly because I was a little nervous sitting for the first time. And since you said so, of course I believe you. Aren't you wearing your seatbelt? Urza asked, turning her head. It's uncomfortable to tie it on. It makes people feel tied down, Gray replied. But it's also for safety. Kana, who was sitting by the side, honestly spoke up, although she shares the same intense curiosity as Gray, but not as hyperactive as Gray. It's okay, didn't Xingchen say it? He's very skilled. Gray shrugged his shoulders, still indifferent. Ready to go. At this moment, due to time constraints, it will be dark soon. Therefore, Luo Xingchen reminded loudly. Ready. The three responded. Seeing this, Luo Xingchen squeezed the steering wheel slightly. In an instant, a huge amount of magic power burst out from within the body. The SE plugs that connect the arms all bulged for a moment. At the same time, Luo Xingchen stepped on the accelerator to the bottom. Boom! The magic quadricycle made a violent roar. 4 tires in an instant. It accelerated from a standstill to a speed that almost appeared after images. The speed pointer in front of Luo Xingchen also went from 0 to the explosive watch. The violent starting speed directly caused the entire body to bounce up. A sudden pushback. In an instant, Gray changed his posture from clinging to Luo Xingchen's chair, hit the rear seat. And it was firmly attached to it, and it couldn't move at all. Ah! Feel the super high speed and the scenery passing quickly outside the window. Gray's heart jumped to his throat. Stars, stars. Gray spoke with difficulty, as if trying to say something. But the sudden rollover suddenly blocked Gray's words back. The body appears to be going through a bend. But Luo Xingchen didn't slow down in the slightest. Even the whole side of the car was lifted up. Inside the carriage, Gray's entire body uncontrollably slammed into the glass on the side. Boom! A cold touch reached Gray's cheeks. Gray, who was pouting against the window, hadn't reacted. The return of the body is another feeling of pushing back from the front, bumping Gray into the seat again. Quick, let him stop. Gray struggled to say a complete sentence. But maybe it's too shocking, so much so that no one on the side responded to Gray at all. Boom! It seemed that a stone had been hit, and the whole body began to bump upwards. And Gray, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, flew all over. Then it slammed into the iron roof of the magic quadricycle. I'm going to die. Help! Let me out! Let me out! On a deserted road, Gray's screams seemed to have passed far, far. The poor town of Plata. This is the southern edge of the kingdom of Fiori. Because the sea is in front of the door, therefore, most of the residents here rely on fishing for their livelihood. It can be said that the fishing industry feeds the town. Therefore, there is no mage guild here. But success is also fishing, and failure is also fishing. The happy life of the residents was just a few days ago, after being attacked by sea beasts that were supposed to live in the deep sea area, was completely terminated. And that's what residents entrusted to Fairy Tale. Drive out the sea beasts that have made their home on the coastline. Only in this way can the town return to its normal life. Outskirts of town. From a distance, you can see the overwhelming smoke and dust in the air. It was the sound of the roaring engine of the magic quadricycle. The magic four-wheeled vehicle with the Fairy Tale logo has broken through the shackles of smoke. Headed straight to the outskirts of town. It's about to hit. It's about to hit. Inside the car, Kana clung to her seat belt tightly. There was a sharp growl. Even Urza was pale, cold sweat covering her forehead. As for Gray, this guy is foaming at the mouth at the moment. His eyes are constantly turning in circles. It seems to have fainted, seeing the city wall getting closer. Luo Xingchen's eyes narrowed, and then he turned the steering wheel sharply. The right foot that had been stomping on the accelerator immediately.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.